Tonight, a lone man stops on an empty highway, never expecting that the trembling woman beside the broken-down car is the billionaire who once shattered him in the past. She's wealthy, powerful, but now she's running from her own life. One night of shelter becomes 2, 3, then a whole month. Two completely opposite worlds begin to collide, vibrate, and break down the strongest walls. Follow this story to the very end. Hit like and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has traveled. Now, let's begin. The headlights cut through the dark like a blade through black fabric. Ethan Cole kept his hand steady on the wheel, eyes trained on the broken yellow line that split the highway in half. It was past midnight, and the road stretched out empty in both directions, the kind of empty that made you wonder if the rest of the world had just stopped existing. He should have been home an hour ago. His daughter Maya was with Mrs. Chen next door, probably asleep on his couch by now, with some cartoons still playing. The overtime shift at the warehouse had run long, as it always did when they were short-staffed. Ethan's back ached, his eyes burned, and all he wanted was to collapse into bed and forget the day ever happened. Then he saw the car. It sat crooked on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking weakly against the night. A silver luxury sedan, the kind that cost more than Ethan made in 2 years. The hood was up, steam rising in thin wisps that the wind pulled apart and scattered. Ethan's first instinct was to keep driving. People with cars like that had roadside assistance, insurance that actually worked, phones that didn't crack when you dropped them. They didn't need help from guys like him. But there was someone sitting on the ground beside the front tire. He could see the shape of her even from a distance, hunched over, arms wrapped around her knees, head down. Alone. Vulnerable in a way that made something tighten in his chest. Ethan slowed down, pulled over about 20 feet behind her car, left his engine running just in case. When he stepped out, the cold hit him immediately. October in the mountains didn't mess around. He zipped his jacket higher and walked toward her, his boots crunching on gravel. "Hey," he called out, keeping his voice even. "You okay?" She didn't look up, didn't move at all. He stopped a few feet away, suddenly aware of how this might look. Strange man approaching a woman alone at night. "I'm not trying to scare you. Just saw you sitting here. Wanted to make sure you're all right." Still nothing. Ethan shifted his weight, unsure. Then she raised her head, and the breath left his lungs in one sharp exhale. Victoria Hale. He knew that face. Everyone in the state knew that face. She'd been on the cover of Forbes 3 months ago, some article about the youngest female CEO in the tech industry. Her company had just gone public, made her worth something like $2 billion overnight. She was always in the news, always polished, always untouchable. But the woman sitting in front of him now looked like she'd been through a war. Her hair hung loose and messy around her shoulders. Her makeup was smeared, dark streaks running down her cheeks. She wore an expensive dress, black and sleek, but it was wrinkled and dirty at the hem. Her eyes were red, swollen, and when she looked at him, there was no recognition, just exhaustion. "Victoria?" The name came out before he could stop it. Something flickered across her face. Not surprise, not relief, just a kind of dull acknowledgement, like she'd already resigned herself to being recognized. "Leave me alone," she said. Her voice was hoarse, raw. Ethan blinked. "Your car's broken down. I know. You can't just sit here all night. Watch me." He stared at her for a long moment, trying to reconcile the image of the powerful CEO he'd seen on television with the woman trembling on the side of the road. "Did you call someone? Roadside assistance? A friend?" She laughed, and it was the saddest sound he'd ever heard. "I don't want to call anyone." "Why not?" "Because they'll make me go back." Her voice cracked on the last word, and she turned her face away, shoulders shaking. Ethan didn't know what to do. He wasn't good with crying women. Hell, he wasn't good with people in general. But something about the way she sat there, trying so hard to hold herself together and failing, made it impossible to walk away. He crouched down beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Go back where?" She didn't answer, just wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "Look," Ethan said quietly, "I don't know what's going on, and you don't have to tell me. But you can't stay out here. It's freezing, and this highway doesn't see a lot of traffic at night. Let me give you a ride somewhere." "I don't have anywhere to go." "What about a hotel?" She shook her head, almost violently. They'll find me. He'll find me. Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't need to ask who he was. The pronoun carried enough weight on its own. He should have walked away then. Should have gotten back in his truck, driven home, pretended he never saw her. This wasn't his problem. Victoria Hale lived in a different world, one he'd never be part of. Whatever mess she was running from, it was way above his pay grade, but when she looked at him again, eyes wide and pleading and terrified, he couldn't do it. "I've got a spare room," he heard himself say. "It's not much, just a couch, really. But it's warm, and it's quiet, and nobody's going to bother you there." Victoria stared at him like he'd just offered her the moon. "You don't even know me. I know you're scared, and I know what it's like to need a place to disappear for a while." She studied his face for a long time, searching for something. Ethan didn't know if she found it, but eventually she nodded. "Okay." He stood up, offered her his hand. She took it, her fingers ice cold and trembling. When she got to her feet, she swayed a little, and he steadied her with a hand on her elbow. "What about your car?" he asked. "Leave it. I don't care." Ethan glanced at the sedan, probably worth more than his house. "Someone's going to strip it for parts by morning." "Good," she said flatly. He didn't argue, just walked her to his truck, opened the passenger door, and helped her climb in. She moved stiffly, like every muscle hurt. When he got behind the wheel, she was already staring out the window, arms wrapped around herself again. They drove in silence for the first 10 minutes. Ethan kept the radio off, didn't push for conversation. Victoria looked like she'd shatter if he said the wrong thing. Finally, she spoke. "Why are you helping me?" He kept his eyes on the road. "Why wouldn't I? Most people would have kept driving." "Yeah, well, I'm not most people." She turned to look at him then, really look at him, and something shifted in her expression. "Do I know you?" Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. "We met once, a long time ago." "Where?" "Doesn't matter." But it did matter. It mattered more than he wanted to admit. 12 years ago, he'd been a freshman at State, working 2 jobs to pay tuition. She'd been a senior, already legendary on campus for her brilliance and her ambition. They'd crossed paths at some party he didn't belong at, ended up talking for hours on a back porch while everyone else got drunk inside. She'd been magnetic, funny, real in a way he didn't expect. They'd exchanged numbers, made plans to meet up again. And then she'd ghosted him, completely, like he'd never existed. A week later, he saw her on campus with some guy in a tailored suit, laughing at something he said. She'd glanced Ethan's way once, her eyes sliding past him like he was invisible. It shouldn't have hurt as much as it did. They'd only talked for one night, but it did hurt. It hurt for a long time. Now here she was, sitting in his truck, not even remembering his face. "You look familiar," she said softly. "I've got one of those faces." She didn't push, just turned back to the window. Ethan's house was on the outskirts of town, a small 2-bedroom rental with peeling paint and a chain-link fence. The yard was overgrown, the porch light flickered, and the whole place had a tired, worn-down look that matched how Ethan felt most days. He pulled into the driveway, killed the engine. "It's not much." "It's perfect," Victoria said, and the way she said it made him believe she meant it. Inside, the house was quiet. Maya's toys were scattered across the living room floor. Plastic dinosaurs, coloring books, a half-finished puzzle. Ethan felt a flash of embarrassment, but Victoria didn't seem to notice. She stood in the middle of the room, looking around like she'd just stepped into a museum. "You have a kid," she said. "A daughter, Maya. She's 7. "Where is she?" "Next door with the neighbor. I'll pick her up in the morning." Victoria nodded slowly. "And her mother?" "Not in the picture." Ethan kept his voice neutral, the way he always did when people asked. "Hasn't been for a while." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. We're good." She looked at him for a long moment, then her face crumpled, and she started crying again. Not the quiet, controlled tears from before. Full, body-shaking sobs that she tried to muffle with her hands. Ethan froze. Then, moving on instinct, he crossed the room and put a hand on her shoulder. "Hey, it's okay. You're okay." "I'm not," she choked out. "I'm really not." You will be. She shook her head, but she didn't pull away. Just stood there, crying into her hands while Ethan stood beside her, helpless and out of his depth, but unwilling to leave. Eventually, the sobs subsided. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing what was left of her makeup. I'm sorry. I don't usually fall apart like this. You're allowed to fall apart. God knows you've earned it. She let out a shaky laugh. You don't even know what I'm running from. You'll tell me when you're ready, or you won't. Either way, you're safe here. Something in her expression softened. Why are you being so kind to me? Ethan shrugged. Maybe I remember what it's like to feel like the world's too heavy to carry. She didn't respond, just looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Come on, he said gently. Let me show you where you can sleep. He led her down the narrow hallway to the second bedroom. It was barely big enough for the twin bed and old dresser inside, but it was clean. He'd been using it for storage mostly, boxes of things he didn't know what to do with. Bathroom's across the hall, he said. Towels are in the cabinet. If you need anything, just knock. Victoria sat down on the edge of the bed, her shoulders sagging. Thank you, Ethan. The sound of his name in her voice did something strange to his chest. Get some rest. He started to leave, but she spoke again. Ethan? He turned back. I do remember you, she said quietly. From college. The party. His breath caught. I'm sorry I disappeared on you, she continued. I was. There were things happening in my life that I couldn't explain, and I was a coward. Ethan stood in the doorway, not sure what to say. Part of him wanted to tell her it didn't matter, that it was ancient history. But another part of him, the part that still remembered waiting for a text that never came, couldn't quite let it go. You weren't a coward, he said finally. You were just doing what you had to do. That doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it human. She looked at him with those red, exhausted eyes, and he saw something in them he hadn't expected. Regret. Real, genuine regret. Good night, Victoria. Good night. He closed the door behind him, stood in the hallway for a long moment, trying to steady his breathing. Then he went to his own room, lay down on top of the covers, and stared at the ceiling until morning light started creeping through the blinds. The next day started with chaos. Ethan picked Maya up from Mrs. Chen's at 7, endured her excited chatter about the cartoon marathon she'd watched, and brought her home. He'd planned to make pancakes, maybe let her play outside for a while before he had to figure out what to do about Victoria. But when they walked through the front door, Victoria was already awake, standing in the kitchen in one of Ethan's old t-shirts and a pair of sweatpants he'd left on the bed. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her face scrubbed clean of makeup. She looked younger, more real. Maya stopped dead in her tracks. Who's that? A friend, Ethan said quickly. She needed a place to stay for a bit. Maya squinted at Victoria with the intense scrutiny only a 7-year-old could manage. Are you Dad's girlfriend? Maya. No, Victoria said, a small smile tugging at her lips. I'm not. I'm just someone your dad was kind enough to help. Oh. Maya seemed to accept this. I'm Maya. I'm 7 3/4. Nice to meet you, Maya. I'm Victoria. That's a fancy name. I suppose it is. Maya dropped her backpack by the door and wandered into the kitchen, apparently satisfied with the explanation. Ethan exhaled, relieved. Sorry, he said to Victoria. She's got no filter. I like her, Victoria said, and she sounded like she meant it. The morning unfolded in a strange, tentative rhythm. Ethan made pancakes while Victoria sat at the kitchen table with Maya, listening to her talk about school and her favorite dinosaurs and the tooth she'd lost last week. Victoria asked questions, actually listened to the answers, and for a little while, it almost felt normal. But Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes kept drifting to the window like she expected someone to appear. After breakfast, Maya went to her room to play, and Ethan and Victoria were left alone in the kitchen. I need to figure out what I'm doing, Victoria said quietly. You don't have to rush. I can't stay here forever. You can stay as long as you need. She looked at him, eyes searching. Why are you doing this? I told you. No, really. Why? Ethan set down the dish he was washing, turned to face her. Because 12 years ago, you talked to me like I mattered. You didn't have to. I was nobody, and you were already someone. But you treated me like I was worth your time, and maybe that's stupid. Maybe it shouldn't matter after all these years, but it does. Victoria's face went pale. Ethan, I'm not looking for anything from you, he said quickly. I'm not trying to guilt you or make you feel bad. I needed you to know that. That night meant something to me, even if it didn't mean anything to you. She stood up, crossed the small kitchen until she was standing right in front of him. It meant something to me too. Then why? Because 2 days after that party, my father told me I was getting married. The words came out flat, emotionless. To Richard Hale, my father's business partner. It was already arranged. The wedding was 6 months away. I didn't have a choice. Ethan felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. You were engaged? Not officially, but it didn't matter. My father didn't ask. He told me. And I was too afraid to say no. Jesus, Victoria. So I ran, she continued, her voice shaking now. I ghosted you because I couldn't face telling you the truth. I was ashamed and scared, and I thought if I just disappeared, it would hurt less. For both of us. Did it? She let out a bitter laugh. No, it didn't. They stood there in the quiet kitchen, the weight of 12 years pressing down between them. I'm sorry, she whispered, for all of it. Ethan didn't know what to say, didn't know how to process the fact that the woman who'd haunted his thoughts for over a decade had been trapped in her own nightmare the whole time. What about now? He asked. Your husband, ex-husband, almost. The divorce papers are filed, but Richard's contesting them. He doesn't want to let me go. Is he the one you're running from? Victoria nodded, her jaw tight. He's controlling, manipulative, and he has lawyers who can make my life hell if I don't cooperate. What does he want? Me to come back, to play the perfect wife again, to stop embarrassing him with all this divorce nonsense. She spat the last word like it tasted poison. Ethan felt anger rising in his chest, hot and sharp. He can't force you to stay married to him. He can make it impossible for me to leave. He's already frozen half my assets, turned the board against me, made it so I can't access my own company without a fight. That's legal, she finished. Barely, but legal. What about your son? Ethan asked, remembering something he'd read in one of those articles. Lucas? Victoria's face crumpled. He's with Richard. I didn't even get to say goodbye before I left. Richard told him I abandoned him. That's not true. But Lucas believes it. He's 13. He doesn't understand why I had to leave. Ethan reached out, hesitated, then put his hand over hers. We'll figure it out. She looked at him, eyes wide. We? You're not alone in this. Not anymore. Victoria stared at him for a long moment, then her face broke and she started crying again. But this time, Ethan pulled her into a hug, and she didn't resist, just buried her face in his shoulder and let it all out. They stood like that for a long time, until Maya came running into the kitchen, asking if they could go to the park. The next few days settled into an unexpected routine. Victoria didn't leave. Ethan didn't ask her to. She slept in the spare room, helped out around the house in small ways, and slowly started to relax. The tension in her shoulders eased. She smiled more. She even laughed once when Maya told her a terrible knock-knock joke. Ethan went to work, came home, cooked dinner. Victoria sat at the table with them, asked Maya about her day, and listened like every word mattered. Maya warmed up to her quickly, the way kids do when they sense genuine kindness. At night, after Maya went to bed, Ethan and Victoria would sit on the back porch with mugs of tea, talking. Sometimes about the past, sometimes about nothing at all. It was easy in a way Ethan hadn't expected. On the fourth night, Victoria asked about Maya's mother. Ethan took a long sip of tea, stalling. Her name was Jessica. We met when I was 23, got married way too fast, had Maya a year later. She left when Maya was 2. Why? She said motherhood wasn't what she expected, said she felt trapped. He kept his voice even, clinical. She moved to California, sends birthday cards sometimes. That's it. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Do you hate her? No, I did for a while, but now I mostly just feel sorry for her. She's missing out on knowing the best kid in the world. Maya's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. Ethan looked at Victoria in the dim porch light. What about you and Richard? How did that happen? Her mouth twisted. I told you. My father arranged it. But you could have said no. Could I? She set her mug down, hands trembling slightly. My father built his entire empire on his reputation, his control. When he told me I was marrying Richard, it wasn't a suggestion. It was an ultimatum. Marry Richard or lose everything. My family, my inheritance, my future. So you chose the money. I chose survival, she shot back, then softened. I was 22, Ethan. I'd never made a decision on my own in my life. Everything was planned for me. Schools, internships, friends, and Richard seemed safe, stable. I thought I could make it work. When did you realize you couldn't? The night of our wedding, he got drunk at the reception, told me I belonged to him now, that he'd waited long enough to collect what he was owed. Her voice went distant. I knew then, but by that point, I was already trapped. Ethan's jaw clenched. Did he hurt you? Not physically. Richard's too smart for that. He hurts you in ways that don't leave marks, controls your money, your schedule, your friends, until you don't even recognize yourself anymore. And Lucas? Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Lucas was the one good thing, the only thing that made any of it bearable. But Richard used him against me, told me if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure I never saw my son again, and he has the lawyers to do it. That's why you ran. She nodded. I couldn't take it anymore. The pretending, the smiling for cameras while dying inside. I just snapped, got in my car and drove until it broke down. On the highway where I found you. Yeah. She looked at him, and there was something raw in her eyes. Do you believe in fate? I don't know. I think maybe I do now. They sat in silence after that, the night air cool around them, the stars scattered overhead like broken glass. On the 6th day, everything changed. Ethan was at work when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Is this Ethan Cole? A man's voice. Smooth, expensive. Who's asking? My name is Richard Hale. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Ethan's blood went cold. Victoria's not a possession. That's a matter of perspective. Richard's tone was pleasant, conversational, like they were discussing the weather. I know she's staying with you. I know where you live. I know you have a daughter. Are you threatening me? I'm stating facts. Victoria is my wife. She's unwell. She needs to come home. She's not going anywhere with you. Richard laughed, and it was a terrible sound. Mr. Cole, you seem like a decent man, a working man. You don't want to get involved in things that are beyond your understanding. This is between my wife and me. She doesn't want to talk to you. What she wants is irrelevant. She has a son, responsibilities, a company that's falling apart without her. She can't just run away and play house with some mechanic. Warehouse worker, Ethan corrected, his temper rising. And she's not playing anything. She's safe here. Safe? Richard's voice hardened. You think you can protect her from me? I have resources you can't imagine, lawyers, connections. One phone call, and I can make your life very difficult. I'm not scared of you. You should be. Men like you don't win against men like me. It's just the way the world works. Maybe, but I'm not giving her up. We'll see. Richard paused. Tell Victoria she has 48 hours to come home. After that, things get ugly. For both of you. The line went dead. Ethan stood in the warehouse break room, phone still pressed to his ear, heart pounding. He wanted to throw something, wanted to drive to wherever Richard Hale lived and put his fist through the man's perfect teeth. But he didn't. He took a breath, clocked out early, drove home. Victoria was in the kitchen when he walked in, chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked up, smiling, then her face fell. What's wrong? Richard called me. The knife clattered to the cutting board. What? He knows you're here, knows about Maya. Gave us 48 hours before he makes things ugly. Victoria's face went white. Oh, God. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I didn't think I should leave. Right now, I can't put you and Maya in danger. You're not leaving. You don't understand what he's capable of. I don't care. Ethan crossed the kitchen, took her hands in his. They were shaking. I'm not letting him intimidate us, either of us. He'll destroy you, your job, your reputation, your custody of Maya. Then we'll fight him. With what? He has millions of dollars and an army of lawyers. We have the truth, and we have each other. Victoria stared at him, tears streaming down her face. Why are you doing this? You barely know me. Because I know what it's like to feel powerless, and I know what it's like to wish someone had stood up for me when I couldn't stand up for myself. He squeezed her hands. You're not alone anymore, Victoria. You don't have to run. She broke then, completely, sobbed into his chest while he held her, whispering that it would be okay, even though he had no idea if it would. That night, they made a plan. Victoria would call her lawyer in the morning, file a restraining order against Richard, document everything, build a case that would protect her and Lucas. Ethan would take time off work, stay close in case Richard tried anything, and they would wait. The 48 hours passed slowly. Ethan barely slept, jumping at every car that drove past the house, every unfamiliar sound. Victoria was worse. She paced constantly, checked her phone obsessively, flinched at shadows. Maya sensed the tension but didn't ask questions, just stayed close to her dad, quieter than usual. On the second night, at 11:45, headlights flooded the living room. Ethan was on his feet instantly. Stay here, he told Victoria. Ethan, stay here. He grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and stepped out onto the porch. A black SUV sat in his driveway, engine running. The back door opened and a man stepped out. Richard Hale was exactly what Ethan expected. Tall, polished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Ethan's truck. He had the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers. Sharp jaw, perfect hair, cold eyes. Mr. Cole, Richard said pleasantly, we finally meet. Get off my property. I just want to talk to my wife. She's not your wife anymore, and she doesn't want to see you. Richard smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. Why don't we let her decide that? The front door opened behind Ethan. Victoria stepped out, chin raised despite the fear in her eyes. Hello, darling, Richard said. You look well. Poverty seems to agree with you. What do you want, Richard? I want you to come home. Lucas misses you. Don't. Her voice shook. Don't use our son against me. I'm not using anyone. I'm simply stating facts. He asks about you every day, wants to know why his mother abandoned him. I didn't abandon him. You wouldn't let me see him because you ran away in the middle of the night like a criminal. Richard took a step forward. Ethan moved to block him. Mr. Cole, this is a family matter. It doesn't concern you. It concerns me when you show up at my house threatening people. I haven't threatened anyone. I'm simply trying to bring my wife home. I'm not coming home, Victoria, Victoria said firmly. I want a divorce, Richard. I want custody of Lucas. And I want you to leave me alone. Richard's pleasant expression finally cracked. You don't get to make demands. You signed a prenup. You leave me, you get nothing. No money, no company, no son. I don't care about the money. Yes, you do. You've never lived without it. You wouldn't last a month. Watch me. Richard's eyes narrowed. Fine, have it your way, but don't come crying to me when reality sets in. He turned to Ethan. And you. I'd be very careful if I were you. Men in your position are easy to break. One complaint to CPS about an unstable home environment, and you lose your daughter. One call to your employer about theft or misconduct, and you lose your job. I can make you disappear without lifting a finger. Ethan stepped forward, close enough to see the pupils of Richard's eyes contract. Try it, and I'll make sure every news outlet in the state knows how you treat your wife, how you control her, threaten her. See how that plays with your shareholders. Richard stared at him for a long moment. Then he smiled. You're going to regret this. I doubt it. Richard got back in his SUV. The vehicle reversed out of the driveway, tires crunching on gravel, and disappeared into the night. Ethan and Victoria stood on the porch, breathing hard. "He's not going to stop," Victoria said quietly. "No, probably not. I'm sorry I brought this into your life." Ethan turned to her. "I'm not." She looked at him, eyes searching his face. "Why?" "Because for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm doing something that matters." Victoria didn't respond, just reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. They stood like that until the cold drove them inside. The next morning, Victoria's lawyer called. The restraining order had been approved. Richard was legally required to stay at least 500 feet away. It wasn't much, but it was something. That afternoon, Victoria made another call, to Lucas. Ethan stayed in the kitchen while she sat on the couch, phone pressed to her ear, voice shaking. "Hi, sweetheart, it's Mom." Ethan couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he could see Victoria's face crumbling. I know it looks like I left you, but I promise I didn't. I would never leave you." A pause. Then her voice broke. "Lucas, please, just listen." Another pause. Longer. Okay, I understand, but I love you. Please remember that. I love you so much." She lowered the phone, sat there staring at nothing. Ethan walked over, sat down beside her. "What did he say?" "He hung up on me." Her voice was barely a whisper. "He said I was a liar, and he never wanted to talk to me again. He's 13, and his father's been poisoning him against you. What if he never forgives me?" "He will. Kids are resilient. He'll see the truth eventually." "What if he doesn't?" Ethan didn't have an answer for that, so he just put his arm around her shoulders and let her cry. Days turned into weeks. Victoria stayed. Richard didn't show up again, but his presence lingered in other ways. Legal notices, threatening emails, calls from private investigators. Victoria's lawyer fought back, filed motions, built a case. In the meantime, life went on. Victoria enrolled Lucas in therapy through a court order. He refused to see her in person, but the therapist said he was starting to ask questions, starting to doubt the narrative Richard had fed him. It was progress. Slow, painful progress, but progress. Victoria also started working again, remotely. Her board had voted to temporarily remove her as CEO, but she still had shares, still had influence. She worked late into the night, rebuilding alliances, planning her next move. Ethan watched her transform. The broken woman he'd found on the highway was still there, but she was stronger now, more sure of herself. And somewhere along the way, without either of them really meaning for it to happen, they became something more than friends. It started small. Hands brushing when they passed in the hallway, lingering looks across the dinner table, conversations that stretched past midnight. Then one night, 3 weeks after Victoria had shown up, Ethan found her crying on the back porch. He sat down beside her. "Bad day?" "Lucas's birthday is next week. I'm not allowed to see him." Ethan didn't know what to say, so he just put his arm around her and she leaned into him, head on his shoulder. "I'm tired," she whispered. "I'm so tired of fighting." "I know. Sometimes I think I should just give up. Let Richard win. At least then I could see my son." "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" She turned to look at him, eyes red. "What am I even fighting for anymore? My company's gone. My reputation's destroyed. My son hates me. What's the point? The point is that you deserve to be free. You deserve to be happy. I don't even remember what happy feels like." Ethan cupped her face in his hands, forced her to look at him. "Then let me remind you." And he kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, giving her room to pull away. But she didn't. She kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victoria stared at him with wide eyes. "Ethan, I know this is complicated. I know the timing's terrible, but I don't care." He kept his hands on her face, thumbs brushing away her tears. "I've been in love with you since the night I met you 12 years ago, and I'm still in love with you now." Victoria's breath hitched. "You can't be." "Why not?" "Because I'm a mess. Because I'm still legally married. Because I have a son who hates me and an ex-husband who wants to destroy me. Because you think you don't deserve to be loved? Ethan finished. But you're wrong. You deserve everything. She started crying again, but this time she was smiling. You're insane. Probably. I'm going to break your heart. You already did once. I survived. She laughed through her tears, and then she kissed him again. Harder this time. Desperate. They ended up tangled together on the porch swing, holding each other like the world might end if they let go. When they finally went inside, hand in hand, Maya was standing in the hallway in her pajamas. Are you Dad's girlfriend now? She asked Victoria. Victoria looked at Ethan. He squeezed her hand. Yeah, Victoria said softly. I guess I am. Maya grinned. Cool. And just like that, everything shifted. The morning after Maya's casual declaration that Victoria was now Dad's girlfriend, Ethan woke up to the smell of coffee and something burning. He stumbled into the kitchen to find Victoria standing over the stove, waving a dish towel at a smoking pan while Maya sat at the table, giggling. I was trying to make pancakes, Victoria said, looking embarrassed. Turns out I'm better at running a tech company than operating a stove. Ethan bit back a smile. When's the last time you cooked anything? Define cooking. Using heat to prepare food. She thought about it. College. Maybe. I had a chef after I married Richard. Of course you did. Ethan took the pan from her, dumped the charred remains into the sink. Move over. I'll show you how it's done. They spent the next hour in the kitchen, Ethan teaching Victoria the basics while Maya offered unhelpful commentary from the sidelines. Victoria measured flour with the intense concentration of someone defusing a bomb. She cracked eggs like she was afraid they'd explode. And when she finally flipped a pancake without it landing on the floor, she looked so proud that Ethan had to kiss her. Maya made gagging noises. Gross. You'll understand when you're older, Victoria said. That's what Dad always says. It's a cop-out. Ethan laughed. She's not wrong. They ate breakfast together. The three of them crowded around the small kitchen table, and for a little while, everything felt normal, easy, like they'd been doing this forever. But reality had a way of crashing back in. Victoria's phone rang midway through her second pancake. She glanced at the screen, and her face went pale. It's my lawyer. Ethan reached across the table, squeezed her hand. Take it. She stepped into the living room, phone pressed to her ear. Ethan could hear the murmur of her voice, but not the words. Maya looked at him with wide eyes. Is Victoria in trouble? Not trouble exactly, just complicated grown-up stuff. Is it because of her mean husband? Ethan blinked. How do you know about that? I heard you talking on the porch. You're not very quiet. Great. Sorry, kiddo. Yeah, it's because of him. Maya frowned, pushing her pancake around her plate. Why doesn't she just tell him to go away? She's trying, but sometimes it's not that simple. It should be. If someone's mean to you, you just don't talk to them anymore. That's what you told me when Jenny was being mean at school. You're right, that's what you should do, but adults make things more complicated than they need to be. That's dumb. Yeah, Ethan agreed. It really is. Victoria came back a few minutes later, face tight. What did she say? Ethan asked. Richard's lawyers filed a motion to contest the restraining order. They're claiming I'm mentally unstable and a danger to Lucas. That's insane. They have a psychiatrist willing to testify that I showed signs of emotional instability during the marriage. Victoria sat down heavily. Richard's psychiatrist, the one he made me see after I tried to leave the first time. Ethan felt anger coil in his chest. When was that? 3 years ago. I packed a bag, got as far as a hotel downtown. Richard found me that night, convinced me to come back, said he'd change, that he'd get help. I was stupid enough to believe him. You weren't stupid. You were hopeful. There's a difference. Doesn't feel like it. She rubbed her face. My lawyer says we need to get ahead of this. File our own psychiatric evaluation. Prove I'm stable. You are stable. Am I? I ran away in the middle of the night, left my son, and I'm hiding out in a stranger's house. I'm not a stranger. You know what I mean? Her voice cracked. What if they're right? What if I am unstable? Maya, who'd been quietly listening, spoke up. "You're not crazy, Victoria. You're just sad. That's different." Victoria stared at her, then let out a shaky laugh. "Thank you, Maya." "You're welcome. Can I have another pancake?" The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. Victoria's lawyer, a sharp woman named Diane Chen, who wore power suits and had the demeanor of a bulldog, came to the house to prep her. Ethan gave them space, took Maya to the park. When he came back 3 hours later, Victoria looked exhausted. "How'd it go?" he asked. "She says we have a strong case, but Richard's team is going to tear me apart on the stand, bring up every mistake I've made, every moment I wasn't the perfect wife and mother. You don't have to be perfect. Try telling that to a family court judge." She sank onto the couch. "Diane wants me to get a psychiatric evaluation done this week. Prove I'm mentally sound. She also wants character witnesses, people who can testify that I'm a good mother." "What about your friends?" Victoria laughed bitterly. "What friends? Everyone I knew was connected to Richard somehow. His colleagues, his business partners. The few people I thought were my friends stopped returning my calls the second the divorce was filed." "What about from before? College friends? Family?" "My father disowned me when I left Richard, said I was throwing away everything he built. My mother died when I was 16. And college friends," she trailed off. "I wasn't good at keeping in touch." Ethan sat down beside her. "Then we'll find other people. Your assistant at work, the therapist Lucas has seen, anyone who's seen you with him." "Richard fired my assistant the day I left, and Lucas's therapist can't testify about our sessions. Confidentiality. Then we'll figure something else out." Victoria looked at him, eyes tired. "Why are you so optimistic about this?" "Because the alternative is giving up, and I don't think you're the type to give up. You don't know me as well as you think." "Maybe not, but I know you didn't run away just to go back. You ran because you wanted something different, something better. And that takes guts." She leaned into him, head on his shoulder. "I'm scared." "I know. What if I lose him? What if the judge gives Richard full custody and I never see Lucas again?" "That's not going to happen." You can't promise that." "No," Ethan admitted. "But I can promise I'll be right there with you, whatever happens." Victoria turned her face into his neck, and he felt her tears hot against his skin. The psychiatric evaluation took place in a bland office building downtown. Victoria went alone, insisted on it. Ethan waited in the truck, parked across the street, watching the entrance like Richard might materialize out of thin air. 2 hours later, Victoria emerged. She looked drained, but steady. "How was it?" Ethan asked when she climbed into the passenger seat. "Humiliating. They asked about my childhood, my marriage, my sex life, whether I'd ever had suicidal thoughts, whether I heard voices." "What did you tell them?" "The truth, that I've been depressed, that I've felt hopeless, but that I'm not unstable and I'm not a danger to anyone." "Good. I don't know if it'll be enough." Ethan reached over, took her hand. "It will be." They drove in silence for a while. Then Victoria spoke again, quieter. "I called Lucas yesterday." Ethan glanced at her. "How'd that go?" He answered this time, didn't hang up immediately. "That's progress." He still wouldn't talk to me, just listened. I told him I loved him, that I was sorry, that I was fighting to see him again. Her voice wavered. He said, "Dad says you don't really want me. You just want to hurt him." Jesus. I told him that wasn't true, that I'd never use him like that. He didn't respond, just hung up. He's confused. Richard's been filling his head with lies. I know, but what if he believes them? What if he grows up thinking I abandoned him? He won't. Kids aren't stupid. Eventually, he'll see through Richard's manipulation. Eventually, might be too late. Ethan didn't have an answer for that, so he just held her hand tighter and kept driving. That night, after Maya went to bed, Ethan and Victoria sat on the back porch. It had become their routine, this quiet hour before sleep, a space where they could just exist without pretending everything was fine. "Tell me something good," Victoria said suddenly. "Something that has nothing to do with lawyers or custody battles or my disaster of a life." Ethan thought about it. Maya lost another tooth today. She put it under her pillow. Very seriously informed me that the tooth fairy better bring at least $5 because inflation is real. Victoria laughed, the sound surprising both of them. $5? I got a quarter when I was her age. Yeah, well, she's got opinions about the economy. I have no idea where she gets it. She's smart, takes after her dad. Or she watches too much news when I'm not looking. They fell into comfortable silence. Then Victoria spoke again, softer. I keep thinking about what happens after. After what? After the hearing, after the divorce is finalized, assuming I get custody, or at least visitation. What then? What do you mean? I mean, she gestured vaguely. This, us. I'm still a CEO, or I will be again if I can get my board back on my side. I have a company to run, obligations, a life that's nothing like this. Ethan's chest tightened. You're asking if I fit into that life. I'm asking if you want to. He was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. I don't know what your life looks like. The money, the galas, the business meetings, that's not my world. But if you're asking whether I want to be with you, the answer's yes, wherever that means. Even if it means moving, changing everything? Even then. Victoria looked at him, eyes searching. I don't want you to give up your life for me. I'm not. I'm choosing something different. There's a difference. What about Maya, her school, her friends, Mrs. Chen next door? You'd be asking her to leave all of that. Kids are resilient. She'd adjust. Would she, though? Or would she end up resenting me for taking her away from everything she knows? Ethan reached out, cupped her face. Hey, stop borrowing trouble from tomorrow. We don't even know what's going to happen at the hearing yet. I'm just trying to think ahead. I know, but maybe don't think so far ahead that you miss what's right in front of you. She leaned into his touch, eyes closing. What's in front of me? This. Right now. You and me sitting on a porch that's falling apart, drinking cheap wine, talking about the future like we have any control over it. Victoria smiled, small and sad. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just stubborn. That too. He kissed her then, slow and gentle, and for a little while, the future didn't matter. The next morning brought another complication. Ethan was at work, halfway through his shift, when his supervisor pulled him aside. We need to talk, Mike said. He was a decent guy, mid-50s, had worked at the warehouse longer than Ethan had been alive. What's up? Mike looked uncomfortable. Someone called corporate yesterday. Made some complaints about you. Ethan's stomach dropped. What kind of complaints? Theft. Said you've been taking supplies, tools, equipment, that kind of thing. That's bullshit. I've never stolen anything. I know, I told them that, but corporate wants to do an investigation anyway. Policy. An investigation? Yeah, they're sending someone down next week. In the meantime, you're suspended. With pay, Mike added quickly. It's just a precaution. Ethan felt rage building in his chest, hot and sharp. This is Richard Hale, isn't it? He called in a fake complaint to get me fired. Mike frowned. Who's Richard Hale? My girlfriend's ex-husband. He's been threatening me. Told me he'd make my life difficult if I didn't back off. Jesus, Ethan, you need to report that. To who? The guy's a billionaire. He has lawyers who eat people like me for breakfast. Still, you can't just let him... I know. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. I'll handle it. Just let me know when corporate's coming, okay? Yeah, sure. Mike hesitated. For what it's worth, I don't believe any of it. You're one of the most honest guys I know. Thanks, Mike. But honest didn't matter when you were up against someone with unlimited resources and no conscience. Ethan drove home, called Victoria from the driveway. She answered on the second ring. What's wrong? How do you know something's wrong? You never call during work hours. What happened? He told her. By the end, she was silent. Victoria? This is my fault. Her voice was tight. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have known Richard would do something like this. It's not your fault. He's the one making threats. But you wouldn't be in this position if it weren't for me. I'd be in a different position, probably a worse one. How can you say that? Because before you showed up, I was going through the motions. Work, home, sleep, repeat. I was surviving, not living. Now I have something to fight for. Your job, Ethan. He's going after your job. Then I'll get another one. It's not that simple. Sure it is. I'm a hard worker. Someone else will hire me. Not if Richard blacklists you. He has connections everywhere. One word from him, and you'll be unemployable. Ethan leaned back against the truck, closed his eyes. So what do you want me to do? Walk away? Pretend we never met? No, I don't want you to lose everything because of me. I'm not losing everything. I'm choosing you. There's a difference. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, softly, I love you. It was the first time she'd said it. The words hit him like a punch to the chest in the best way. Say that again, he said. I love you, Ethan Cole, and I'm terrified I'm going to ruin your life. You won't. You don't know that. No, but I'm willing to take the risk. He could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, shaky and uneven. Come home, she said finally. Please. I'm already here. When he walked inside, she was waiting. She wrapped her arms around him, buried her face in his chest, and held on like he might disappear. We'll figure this out, he murmured into her hair. Together. Promise? Promise. The investigation happened the following week. A woman from corporate showed up with a clipboard and a permanent frown, interviewed Ethan and half the warehouse staff, reviewed inventory logs going back 6 months. In the end, they found nothing, because there was nothing to find. But the damage was done. Ethan's coworkers looked at him differently now, whispered when he walked by. Even Mike seemed uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Ethan lasted another 2 weeks before he quit. You didn't have to do that, Victoria said when he told her. Yeah, I did. It was toxic. I couldn't keep working there knowing everyone thought I was a thief. What are you going to do now? Find something else. I've got savings. We'll be okay for a while. But the truth was, he didn't know. Richard had been thorough. Every job Ethan applied to, he got the same response. We've decided to go in a different direction. One hiring manager was honest enough to tell him off the record that someone had called with concerns about his character. It was suffocating, maddening, and there was nothing Ethan could do about it. I could hire you, Victoria said one night, at my company, once I get my position back. No. Why not? Because then everyone would say I'm only with you for your money, that I'm using you. I don't care what people say. I do. Ethan set down his beer, looked at her seriously. I need to do this on my own, find my own way. Otherwise, I'll always feel like I'm just tagging along in your world. Victoria's face softened. You're not tagging along. You're the reason I'm still standing. Then let me stand on my own 2 feet too. She didn't argue, just nodded and let it go. 2 days before the custody hearing, Lucas called. Not Victoria. Lucas. Ethan was in the garage trying to fix Maya's bike when Victoria came running out, phone in hand, face pale. It's him. He's calling. So answer it. I'm scared. What if he hates me? What if... Victoria. Answer the phone. She did, hands shaking. Lucas? Ethan couldn't hear the response, but he saw Victoria's face crumble. I'm here, baby. I'm listening. She walked back into the house, and Ethan gave her space. Worked on the bike, tried not to imagine what was being said. 20 minutes later, she came back out. Her eyes were red, but she was smiling. He wants to see me, she said, voice breaking. He asked if he could come here, before the hearing. What did you say? I said yes, if it's okay with you. Of course it's okay. Richard's going to lose his mind. Let him. Victoria laughed, shaky but real. Lucas said he's been thinking about what I told him, about how I left to keep myself safe, not because I didn't love him. His therapist has been helping him see it differently. That's good. That's really good. He still has questions. He's still angry, but he wants to talk. Then we'll make it work. She crossed the garage, wrapped her arms around him. Thank you. For what? For giving me a place where I can bring my son, for not running when things got hard, for being you. Ethan held her close, kissed the top of her head. You don't have to thank me for any of that. I do, though, because not everyone would have done what you've done. Then not everyone deserves you. Lucas arrived on a Saturday afternoon, driven by his therapist per the court's temporary visitation agreement. He was 13, tall for his age, with Victoria's dark hair and eyes that looked too old for his face. He stood on the porch, hands shoved in his pockets, looking anywhere but at his mother. Hi, Victoria said softly. Hi. They stared at each other for a long, painful moment. Then Lucas spoke again. Dad says you're living with some random guy, that you don't care about me anymore. Your dad's wrong, Victoria said, voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. I care about you more than anything in this world. That's why I left, because I couldn't be the mother you deserved while I was trapped in that house. You could have taken me with you. I tried. Your father wouldn't let me, and I was afraid if I pushed too hard, I'd never see you again. Lucas's jaw tightened. That's a cop-out. You're right, it is. I should have fought harder. I should have been braver. I'm sorry. He didn't respond, just looked past her into the house. Is he here? The guy? Ethan. Yes, do you want to meet him? Lucas shrugged, but his eyes said yes. Ethan came to the door, Maya peeking around his legs. Lucas looked him up and down, clearly unimpressed. You're the one my dad's trying to destroy, Lucas said. That's me. Why? Because I'm helping your mom, and your dad doesn't like that. Are you doing it for her money? Lucas, Victoria started, but Ethan held up a hand. It's a fair question. He looked at Lucas directly. No, I'm not doing it for money. I'm doing it because I care about your mom, and because I know what it's like to feel powerless against someone who thinks they own you. Lucas studied him for a long moment. Then he shifted his gaze to Maya. Who's this? I'm Maya, she said, stepping forward. I'm 7 3/4. Do you like dinosaurs? Lucas blinked. Sure. Good. Come see my collection. And just like that, Maya grabbed his hand and dragged him inside. Victoria and Ethan exchanged a look. Well, Ethan said, that went better than expected. Victoria let out a shaky laugh. She's incredible. Yeah, she is. They spent the afternoon together, the 4 of them. It was awkward at first. Lucas barely spoke, just observed everything with wary eyes. But slowly, he started to relax. Maya's relentless enthusiasm was hard to resist. At one point, Ethan found Lucas alone on the back porch, staring out at the yard. Mind if I sit? Ethan asked. Lucas shrugged. Ethan took that as permission. They sat in silence for a while. Then Lucas spoke. My dad says you're poor. I guess I am compared to him. Does it bother you that my mom's rich and you're not? Ethan considered the question. Honestly, sometimes. It's hard not to feel like I'm out of my depth, but your mom doesn't make me feel that way. She treats me like an equal. Do you love her? The question caught Ethan off guard, but he answered honestly. Yeah, I do. Why? Because she's strong and kind. And she's been through hell, but she's still trying. That takes guts. Lucas was quiet. Then, she cries a lot. At night, I can hear her through the walls when I'm on the phone with her. Ethan's chest tightened. She misses you, more than anything. Then why did she leave? Because staying was killing her, and she knew if she didn't get out, she'd have nothing left to give you. Lucas looked at him, eyes hard. That's not good enough. You're right, it's not. But it's the truth. They sat in silence again. Then Lucas said, quieter, I miss her too. You should tell her that. I don't know how. Just say it. She'll understand. Lucas nodded slowly, didn't say anything else. But when they went back inside, he sat next to Victoria on the couch. And when she reached for his hand, he didn't pull away. That night, after Lucas's therapist came to pick him up, Victoria cried for an hour straight. But they were good tears this time. Hopeful ones. He held my hand, she kept saying. He let me hug him goodbye. He said he'd call me tomorrow. Ethan held her while she cried, felt his own throat tighten with emotion he didn't know how to name. It's going to be okay, he said, and for the first time, he actually believed it. The custody hearing was 2 days away. Victoria's lawyer called with last-minute instructions, strategies, contingency plans. Richard's team was coming prepared to eviscerate her. They had to be ready. But that night, lying in bed with Victoria curled against his side, Ethan wasn't thinking about lawyers or courtrooms or Richard Hale. He was thinking about the future, a real future, one where Victoria got her son back, where they figured out how to blend their lives together, where Maya and Lucas became siblings and everything fell into place. It was a fantasy. He knew that. Real life didn't work that way. But lying there in the dark, listening to Victoria breathe, he let himself believe it anyway. The morning of the hearing arrived cold and gray, the kind of October day that felt like the world was holding its breath. Ethan woke up before dawn to find Victoria already dressed, standing at the bedroom window, staring out at nothing. "How long have you been up?" he asked. "I don't think I slept." He got out of bed, went to her. She was wearing a navy suit, her hair pulled back, makeup carefully applied to hide the exhaustion in her face. She looked like the CEO from the magazines again, polished and untouchable. But her hands were shaking. "You're going to be okay," Ethan said. "What if I'm not? What if the judge sides with Richard? What if they decide I'm unfit and I lose Lucas completely?" "That's not going to happen." "You keep saying that, but you don't know. Nobody knows." He turned her to face him, hands on her shoulders. "Listen to me. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. You survived 12 years in a marriage that tried to break you. You walked away from everything to save yourself. You're fighting for your son, even though the whole system is rigged against you. That's not weakness. That's courage." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't feel courageous." "You don't have to feel it. You just have to show up and tell the truth." She nodded, but he could see the fear still there, coiled tight in her chest. They left Maya with Mrs. Chen and drove to the courthouse in silence. Victoria stared out the window the whole way, fingers twisting in her lap. Ethan reached over, covered her hand with his. She grabbed onto him like a lifeline. The courthouse was downtown, an imposing building with marble floors and voices that echoed off the high ceilings. Diane Chen met them in the lobby, already in full lawyer mode. "Ready?" she asked Victoria. "No." "Good. The people who think they're ready are usually lying to themselves." Diane looked at Ethan. "You'll be sitting in the gallery. Don't react to anything you hear, no matter how bad it gets. Judges don't like emotional outbursts." "I'll be fine. Make sure you are. The other side's going to try to provoke a reaction." They went through security, took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The courtroom was smaller than Ethan expected, wood-paneled and formal. Richard was already there with his legal team, 3 lawyers in matching suits who looked like they'd stepped out of a corporate brochure. Richard himself sat at the defendant's table, perfectly composed in a charcoal suit, looking for all the world like a man who'd already won. He glanced at Victoria as she entered, and something cruel flickered across his face before he smoothed it away. Ethan took a seat in the back row, hands clenched in his lap. He wanted to walk over there and put his fist through Richard's smug expression, but he stayed still, stayed silent. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes. Everyone stood. The bailiff called the court to order. And then it began. Richard's lawyer went first, a man named Patterson, who spoke with the kind of smooth confidence that came from never losing. He painted Victoria as unstable, reckless, a woman who'd abandoned her family in a moment of crisis. He cited the psychiatrist's testimony, pointed to her sudden departure, questioned her fitness as a mother. Ethan's jaw ached from clenching it. Then it was Diane's turn. She was calm, methodical, presenting evidence of Richard's controlling behavior. Financial records showing how he'd frozen Victoria's accounts, emails where he threatened her, text messages where he told her she was worthless without him. Richard's expression never changed. He sat there like a statue, unmoved. The judge asked Victoria to take the stand. She walked to the witness box, was sworn in, sat down. Under the courtroom lights, she looked small, vulnerable. But when she started speaking, her voice was steady. Diane led her through the basics. When she married Richard, when Lucas was born, when things started to go wrong. "Can you describe your marriage?" Diane asked. Victoria took a breath. "At first it was fine. Richard was charming, attentive, But after we got married, things changed. He started controlling everything, what I wore, who I talked to, where I went. If I questioned him, he'd tell me I was being ungrateful, that I should be thankful for everything he'd given me. Did this behavior escalate? Yes. He isolated me from my friends, told me they were bad influences. He monitored my phone, my emails. If I tried to make plans without him, he'd cancel them, said he was protecting me. Protecting you from what? From myself, he said. He told me I was too emotional to make good decisions, that I needed him to think for me. Patterson objected. Hearsay, Your Honor. Overruled, the judge said. The witness is describing her experience. Continue. Ms. Hale. Victoria nodded. It got worse after Lucas was born. Richard saw him as an extension of himself. He made all the decisions about his education, his activities, his friends. I was just supposed to smile and go along with it. When I tried to have a say, he'd threatened to take Lucas away. Said no court would give custody to a woman who couldn't even manage her own life. Did you believe him? Yes. I believed him because he had the money and the power and the connections to make it happen. I was terrified. Is that why you stayed? Yes. What changed? Victoria's voice wavered. I woke up one morning and realized I'd stopped recognizing myself. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I didn't know. Someone who'd been so beaten down that she didn't even have the energy to fight anymore. And I thought, if I stay, Lucas is going to grow up watching his father treat me like I'm nothing. He's going to think that's normal. That's love. I couldn't let that happen. So you left? Yes. Did you intend to abandon your son? No, never. I intended to get safe, get a lawyer, and fight for custody properly. But Richard found me before I could. He's been using Lucas against me ever since. Patterson stood for cross-examination, and Ethan's stomach dropped. Ms. Hale, Patterson began, his tone friendly, conversational. You've painted quite a picture of yourself as a victim. But isn't it true that you had access to substantial financial resources throughout your marriage? Richard controlled those resources. But they were available to you if you'd asked, correct? Only if he approved. I see. And this man you claim is so controlling, he allowed you to run a multi-billion-dollar company? My company was separate from the marriage. Was it? Didn't your husband invest millions into your startup? Didn't he sit on your board of directors? Victoria's hands tightened on the armrest. Yes. So he supported your career, funded your dreams. That doesn't sound very controlling to me. He used the company to control me. If I didn't comply with what he wanted, he threatened to pull his investment, to tank the stock. Do you have proof of these threats? They were verbal. How convenient. Patterson smiled. Ms. Hale, isn't it true that you're currently living with a man you barely know? A man you met less than 2 months ago? I know, Ethan. You knew him for one night 12 years ago and then ghosted him. Your words, not mine. That's what you told your therapist, isn't it? Diane objected. Counseling sessions are confidential. Mr. Hale waived confidentiality for the couple's sessions they attended. Patterson countered. The judge allowed it. Victoria's face went pale, but she answered, Yes, I said that. So you have a pattern of running away when things get difficult. No, You ran from Mr. Cole 12 years ago. You ran from your marriage, and now you're living with him again. Quite a coincidence, don't you think? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Please, enlighten us. How did you end up in the home of a man who works, or rather, worked in a warehouse? A man who was recently investigated for theft at his workplace? Ethan's hands clenched into fists. Ethan didn't steal anything, Victoria said firmly. That investigation was baseless. Your client orchestrated it to intimidate him. You're accusing my client of fraud? I'm stating facts. Facts. Patterson's smile sharpened. Let's talk about facts. Fact. You left your 13-year-old son in the middle of the night without explanation. Fact. You moved in with a near stranger instead of checking into a hotel or staying with family. Fact. You've been diagnosed with depression and anxiety. Fact. You're currently unemployed and financially dependent on Mr. Cole. Do these sound like the actions of a stable mother? I'm not financially dependent on anyone. I have my own assets once the court unfreezes them. If the court unfreezes them. And in the meantime, you're living off the charity of a man who can barely support his own child. Diane shot to her feet. Objection. Counsel is testifying. Sustained, the judge said. Mr. Patterson, ask questions or sit down. Patterson nodded, unbothered. Miss Hale, do you love your son? Of course I do. Then why haven't you fought harder to see him? You had visitation last week for the first time in nearly 2 months. 2 months. Most mothers would have been at the courthouse every single day demanding to see their child. I was trying to respect the legal process. Or you were too busy playing house with your new boyfriend. That's not fair, isn't it? You claim you left to protect yourself, but you didn't take your son with you. You claim you love him, but you didn't fight to see him. You claim you're a fit mother, but you're living in a 2-bedroom rental with a man you barely know and his 7-year-old daughter. Tell me, Ms. Hale, where exactly does Lucas fit in this new life you're building? Bertie, Steen. Victoria's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He fits everywhere. He's my son. I would do anything for him. Except stay. Staying would have destroyed me, and then I'd have nothing left to give him. So you chose yourself over your child. I chose survival over slow death. The courtroom was silent. Patterson stared at her for a long moment, then turned to the judge. No further questions. Victoria stepped down, shaking. Diane met her at the gate, put a hand on her arm. They returned to their table, and Ethan could see Victoria struggling to hold herself together. The judge called a recess. 20 minutes. Ethan found Victoria in the hallway, leaning against the wall with her eyes closed. He went to her without a word, pulled her into his arms. I'm sorry, she whispered. I fell apart up there. You told the truth. That's all you could do. It wasn't enough. You don't know that. But her face said she did. When they reconvened, it was Richard's turn to testify. He was polished, calm, every inch the devoted father wronged by his unstable wife. He talked about how he'd supported Victoria's career, how he'd tried to get her help for her mental health issues, how devastating it was when she abandoned their son. I just want what's best for Lucas, he said, his voice heavy with false emotion. I want him to have stability, consistency, a parent who's there for him every day, not someone who runs when things get hard. Diane's cross-examination was brutal. She tore into his financial control, his threats, his manipulation. But Richard never lost his composure. He had an answer for everything, delivered with just the right mix of sadness and concern. By the time he stepped down, Ethan wanted to throw something. The judge called for closing arguments. Patterson went first, hammering home the narrative of Victoria as an unfit mother. Diane followed, painting Richard as a manipulative abuser. Both were compelling. Both made sense in their own way. Then the judge spoke. I'm going to take this under advisement. I'll issue a ruling within 2 weeks. Until then, the current custody arrangement stands. Mr. Hale retains primary custody with supervised visitation for Ms. Hale twice weekly. The gavel came down. It was over. Victoria stood there, frozen. Ethan went to her, but she barely seemed to see him. 2 weeks? She said numbly. I have to wait 2 more weeks. It's going to be okay. You don't know that. You can't know that. She was right. He couldn't. They left the courthouse in a daze. Diane tried to reassure them, said the judge seemed sympathetic to Victoria's situation, but Ethan could see the doubt in her eyes. The drive home was silent. Victoria stared out the window, arms wrapped around herself. When they pulled into the driveway, she finally spoke. I need to be alone for a while. Victoria, please, Ethan, I need to think. He wanted to argue, to tell her that isolating herself wasn't the answer, but he recognized the look in her eyes. She was barely holding on. Okay, he said quietly. I'll be here when you're ready. She nodded and went inside. Ethan sat in the truck for a long time, staring at the house, feeling helpless. Later that evening, he picked Maya up from Mrs. Chen's. She chattered about her day, something about a science project and a boy who'd pulled her hair at recess. Ethan tried to focus, tried to be present, but his mind kept drifting to Victoria. When they got home, Victoria's door was closed. Ethan made dinner, called her down. She didn't come. He ate with Maya, helped her with homework, got her ready for bed. When he tucked her in, Maya looked at him with two knowing eyes. Is Victoria sad? Yeah, kiddo, she is. Because of the mean husband? Because of a lot of things. Will she be okay? Ethan smoothed her hair back. I hope so. Me too. I like her. I know you do. After Maya fell asleep, Ethan knocked softly on Victoria's door. No answer. He opened it carefully, found her sitting on the bed in the dark, staring at nothing. Hey, he said gently. Hey, you didn't eat. I'm not hungry. He sat down beside her, didn't push, just waited. Finally, she spoke. What if I lose him, Ethan? What if the judge decides Richard's right and I'm not fit to be his mother? Then we'll appeal. We'll keep fighting. For how long? How many years of legal battles before Lucas is too old to care? Before he decides his father's right and I really did abandon him? That's not going to happen. You don't know that. Her voice broke. You keep saying it, but you don't know. Nobody does. And I'm so tired of pretending I believe it. Ethan pulled her against him, felt her shaking. I know you're scared. I know this is hell, but you can't give up now. I don't know how to keep going. Yes, you do. You've been doing it your whole life. She turned her face into his shoulder, and he felt the dampness of her tears through his shirt. They sat like that for a long time, the room dark around them, the weight of everything pressing down. The next 2 weeks were the longest of Ethan's life. Victoria went through the motions, showed up for her supervised visits with Lucas, smiled when she was supposed to, but Ethan could see her fading, piece by piece. He tried to help, tried to keep her engaged, keep her hopeful, but there was only so much he could do. On the 10th day, Lucas called again. This time, he asked if he could come over outside of the scheduled visits. I miss you, Mom, he said, and Victoria's face crumpled. I miss you too, baby. Dad says the judge is going to give him full custody, that you'll only get to see me once a month. Is that true? I don't know. The judge hasn't decided yet. But it could be true. Victoria's hands shook. Yes, it could be. Lucas was quiet for a moment. That's not fair. No, it's not. I want to live with you. Victoria's breath caught. What? I want to live with you, Lucas repeated, stronger this time. I don't care about Dad's house, or his money, or any of it. I just want to be with you. Lucas, The judge has to decide. I know, but when she does, I'm going to tell her I want to live with you. Even if it's in a tiny house with some guy I barely know. I don't care. Victoria started crying, ugly sobs that she couldn't control. Thank you, sweetheart. They talked for another hour. When Victoria finally hung up, she looked at Ethan with something like hope in her eyes. He wants to be with me. I heard. Even after everything, even after I left, he still wants me. Of course he does. You're his mother. She crossed the room, wrapped her arms around him. I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do. I love you so much. Ethan held her tight. I love you too. Whatever happens, I need you to know that. You saved me, Ethan. You gave me a place to land when I had nowhere else to go. You stood by me when everyone else walked away. I'll never forget that. You don't have to forget it. You just have to let me keep doing it. She kissed him then, deep and desperate, and for a while they forgot about judges and custody battles and everything else that existed outside that moment. On the 14th day, the ruling came. Diane called just after lunch. Ethan answered, put it on speaker so Victoria could hear. The judge made her decision, Diane said, and Ethan couldn't read her tone. Victoria gripped his hand so hard it hurt. And? Joint custody, 50-50 split. Richard doesn't have sole custody anymore. Victoria's knees gave out. Ethan caught her, held her up. Are you sure? She asked, voice shaking. I'm looking at the order right now. The judge cited evidence of Richard's controlling behavior and Lucas's expressed preference to spend more time with you. She's also requiring Richard to attend co-parenting counseling and anger management. Victoria was crying, laughing, both at once. I can't believe it. I actually won. You both won, Diane corrected. It's joint custody, which means you'll have to work with Richard on major decisions, but you get Lucas half the time, starting next week. Next week, Victoria repeated like she couldn't quite believe it. I'll send over the full order. Congratulations, Victoria. You fought hard for this. When they hung up, Victoria turned to Ethan and kissed him, tears streaming down her face. I get him back. I actually get him back. I told you it would be okay. You did. I didn't believe you, but you were right. Ethan smiled. Don't get used to it. I'm rarely right about anything. She laughed, the sound bright and free. Thank you for everything, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Always. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, and for the first time in months, the future didn't feel terrifying. It felt possible. That night, Victoria called Lucas with the news. He was quiet at first, processing. Then he asked when he could come stay. Next Friday, Victoria said. You'll be here for the whole weekend. What about school? We'll figure it out. Your dad and I will have to coordinate, but we'll make it work. Okay? A pause. Mom? Yeah? I'm glad you didn't give up. Victoria's eyes filled with tears again. Me too, baby. Me too. After she hung up, she turned to Ethan. He's coming here, to this house, for the whole weekend. I heard. Are you ready for that? A teenage boy living here half the time? Are you asking if I'm ready or if I'm willing? Both. Ethan thought about it, thought about the chaos, the complications, the inevitable clashes between a 13-year-old who'd been raised in a mansion and the reality of his small, worn-down house. Thought about how his life was about to change in ways he couldn't predict. I'm willing, he said finally. And I'll get ready as we go. Victoria kissed him, soft and grateful. I don't deserve you. Yeah, you do. You just don't believe it yet. She rested her forehead against his. I'm starting to. The week leading up to Lucas's first visit was a whirlwind. Victoria and Ethan turned the spare room into something more suitable for a teenager. They painted the walls, bought a new bed, added a desk. Maya helped pick out posters, chattering excitedly about having a big brother. Richard, predictably, was furious about the ruling. He sent Victoria a series of scathing emails, which she forwarded to Diane and then deleted. He tried to call multiple times. She didn't answer. He's going to make this as difficult as possible, she told Ethan one night. Let him try. The court's on your side now. For now, but he'll appeal. He'll find some way to twist this. Then we'll deal with it when it happens. Stop borrowing trouble. She smiled faintly. You keep saying that because you keep borrowing it. Friday arrived. Victoria was a nervous wreck. She cleaned the house twice, cooked Lucas's favorite foods, changed her outfit 3 times. He's your son, Ethan reminded her. He's not going to care what you're wearing. I know. I just want everything to be perfect. It won't be. And that's okay. She took a breath, nodded. You're right. Okay, I can do this. Lucas arrived at 6, dropped off by Richard's driver. He stood on the porch with a duffel bag, looking uncertain. Victoria opened the door, and for a moment they just stared at each other. Then Lucas dropped his bag and hugged her, hard. I missed you, he said, voice muffled against her shoulder. I missed you too, sweetheart. So much. They stood like that for a long time. When they finally pulled apart, Lucas's eyes were red. Sorry, he mumbled. Don't apologize, not for that. Maya appeared, bouncing on her toes. Hi, Lucas. Do you want to see your room? We painted it blue. Well, kind of blue. It's more like gray blue. Ethan said it was sophisticated. Lucas smiled despite himself. Sure. The weekend unfolded in fits and starts. There were awkward moments, silences that stretched too long, conversations that died before they started. But there were good moments, too. Lucas and Maya playing video games in the living room. Victoria cooking dinner while Lucas told her about school. All of them eating together at the cramped kitchen table, elbows bumping, laughter breaking out over something stupid. On Saturday night, Ethan found Lucas on the back porch, same spot where he'd sat weeks before. Mind if I join you? Ethan asked. It's your house. It's your house too now, At least part-time. Lucas didn't respond. Ethan sat down anyway. They were quiet for a while. Then Lucas spoke. Do you really love my mom? I do. Even though she's complicated? Especially because she's complicated. Lucas considered this. My dad used to say he loved her, but I don't think he did. I think he just liked controlling her. You're probably right. I don't want her to end up with someone else who treats her like that. Neither do I. Lucas looked at him directly. If you hurt her, I'll make your life hell. Ethan nodded seriously. Fair enough. If I hurt her, I'll deserve it. That seemed to satisfy him. They sat in silence again, more comfortable this time. Can I ask you something? Lucas said eventually. Shoot. Why did you let her stay here? You didn't know her. You didn't owe her anything. Ethan thought about how to answer. I did know her. Not well, but enough. And she looked like someone who needed help. I couldn't just drive past that. Most people would have. Yeah, most people probably would have. I'm glad you didn't. Ethan glanced at him. Yeah? Yeah. Lucas's voice was quiet. She's different now. Lighter, like she can breathe again. She's free. That makes a difference. Are you going to marry her? The question caught Ethan off guard. I don't know. We haven't talked about it. But you want to. It wasn't a question. Ethan didn't bother denying it. Yeah, eventually, if she'll have me. Lucas nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I think she'd say yes. You think so? I know so. I see the way she looks at you, like you're the only real thing in her life. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he just sat there next to this kid who was trying so hard to make sense of his broken, rebuilding world. Sunday came too fast. Richard's driver showed up at 6 to take Lucas back. He hugged Victoria goodbye, promised to call every night. Then he surprised everyone by hugging Ethan too. Take care of her, he said quietly. I will. After he left, Victoria stood in the driveway, watching the car disappear. Ethan put his arm around her. He'll be back in a few days. I know, it's just hard. Letting him go. It'll get easier. Will it? Probably not, but you'll get used to it. She leaned into him, and they stood like that until the cold drove them inside. That night, lying in bed, Victoria turned to him. I've been thinking. About? The future? What happens next? Okay. I want to get my company back, my position. I've been fighting too hard to let Richard take that from me. You should. But I also want this, us, the life we're building here. You can have both. Can I? Because it feels like I'm going to have to choose. Ethan propped himself up on one elbow, looked at her seriously. You don't have to choose. We'll figure it out. Maybe it means I move closer to your office. Maybe it means you work remotely sometimes. Maybe it means we get creative. But you don't have to give up one thing for the other. What about Maya? Her school? Her life here? Kids adapt. And honestly, she'd probably love living somewhere new. Bigger city, more to do. You'd really do that? Uproot your whole life? For you? Yeah, in a heartbeat. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You were brave enough to ask for help. That's more than most people manage. She kissed him, slow and deep. When they finally pulled apart, she was smiling. I love you, Ethan Cole. I love you too, Victoria Hale. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time in months, neither of them had nightmares. The next 3 months were a study in controlled chaos. Lucas came every other weekend, sometimes during the week when his schedule allowed. Maya adored having him around, followed him everywhere until he complained but never actually told her to leave. Victoria slowly rebuilt her life, piece by careful piece, and Ethan watched it all unfold from the center of it, still half convinced he'd wake up one day and find out it was all a dream. But the cracks were showing too. Little ones at first, then bigger. Victoria's fight to reclaim her position at the company intensified. She spent hours on conference calls, locked in the spare room that had become her makeshift office. Her board was split down the middle, half of them loyal to her vision, the other half swayed by Richard's influence and money. She came out of those calls looking exhausted, her eyes dark with frustration. They don't trust me anymore, she said one night, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. Financial reports spread across the surface. Richard's been spreading rumors that I'm unstable, that I abandoned the company the same way I abandoned my marriage. Ethan set a mug of tea in front of her. What kind of rumors? That I'm having a breakdown, that I'm living in poverty with some mechanic who's just using me for money, that I can't be trusted to make rational decisions. I'm a warehouse worker, not a mechanic. He can't even get his insults right. Victoria smiled faintly. I don't think accuracy is his concern. What are you going to do? Fight. What else can I do? I built that company from nothing. I'm not letting him take it from me. Even if it means more legal battles, more money spent on lawyers, even then. She looked at him, defiant. I know it's a lot. I know I'm dragging you into my mess again. If you want to... Don't, Ethan interrupted. Don't finish that sentence. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow too. And the day after that. She reached across the table, took his hand. I'm scared I'm going to lose everything again. The company, Lucas, you, all of it. You're not going to lose me. People always say that right before they leave. Ethan squeezed her hand. I'm not people, and I'm not your ex-husband. Stop waiting for me to turn into him. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded, but the fear was still there in her eyes. Money became an issue neither of them wanted to talk about but couldn't ignore. Ethan still hadn't found steady work, just picking up odd jobs here and there that barely covered the bills. Victoria's assets were still mostly frozen in legal limbo, and what she could access went toward lawyer fees and the ongoing custody battle. They were living on fumes and hope, and everyone knew it. One afternoon, Ethan came home to find Victoria on the phone with her bank, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. I understand there's a hold on the account, but I need access to my own money. Yes, I'm aware of the pending litigation. No, I don't have another account I can use. She listened, jaw clenched. Fine. Thank you for nothing. She hung up, threw the phone onto the couch. What's wrong? Ethan asked. Richard convinced a judge to extend the asset freeze, says I might hide money or transfer it offshore. It's complete bullshit, but the judge signed off on it anyway. How long? Another 3 months, minimum. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. Can you afford that? I don't have a choice. I'll figure it out. I always do. But that night, he heard her crying in the bathroom. She thought he was asleep. He wasn't. He just didn't know what to say that wouldn't make it worse. The next morning, he went to see his old supervisor, Mike, at the warehouse. I need my job back, Ethan said. Mike looked uncomfortable. Ethan, I told you, corporate still got you flagged. I can't just hire you back without their approval. Then get their approval. I was cleared of those theft allegations. There's no reason I can't work here. It's not that simple. The investigation might have cleared you, but there's still a cloud hanging over it. Corporate doesn't want the liability. Liability? I worked here for 6 years without a single issue. One fake complaint and I'm permanently blacklisted? Mike sighed. I'm sorry, man. I really am. But my hands are tied. Ethan left feeling like he'd been punched in the gut. He sat in his truck for 20 minutes, staring at nothing, trying to figure out what the hell he was supposed to do. When he got home, Victoria was at the kitchen table with her laptop again. She looked up when he walked in. How'd it go? They won't take me back. Her face fell. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. It is, though. Richard did this. He's destroying your life because of me. He's trying to. There's a difference. Victoria closed her laptop, rubbed her face. Maybe I should just give him what he wants, drop the custody fight, sign over my shares in the company, disappear. Then he'd leave you alone. That's not happening. Ethan, no, I'm not letting you sacrifice everything just to make my life easier. We're in this together, remember? Together might not be enough. Then we'll figure out what is. But later that night, lying in bed listening to Victoria's uneven breathing, Ethan wondered if he really believed that. Wondered how long they could keep fighting before something broke. Lucas's next visit brought a different kind of tension. He showed up on Friday with his duffel bag and an attitude that could cut glass. Dad's getting remarried, he announced, dropping his bag in the hallway. Victoria froze. What? Yeah, some woman named Carolyn, she's like 25, works at his company. He proposed last week. That fast? Lucas shrugged, but his jaw was tight. Guess he got over you pretty quick. Victoria flinched, and Ethan saw it, saw the way the words landed like a slap. Lucas, Ethan said quietly, that's not fair. Why? It's true, isn't it? He moved on. Maybe Mom should too. Your mom did move on. She's here, building a new life. In a dump with no money and no job. Real upgrade. Lucas. Victoria's voice was sharp. That's enough. It's true, though. You gave up everything. The house, the money, the life. For what? To live here? I gave it up to be free. To be happy. Are you happy? Because you don't look happy. You look stressed and tired and like you're barely holding it together. Victoria's face went pale. Go to your room. Fine. Lucas grabbed his bag, stomped down the hall. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the walls. Victoria stood there, hands shaking. Ethan went to her, but she stepped back. Don't. I need a minute. She went to the bedroom and closed the door. Ethan stood in the kitchen, feeling useless. Maya came out of her room, looked around. Is everyone fighting? Yeah, kiddo, everyone's fighting. That sucks. It really does. An hour later, Ethan knocked on Lucas's door. Can I come in? Whatever. Lucas was sitting on the bed, staring at his phone. Ethan sat down in the desk chair Victoria had picked out. You want to talk about it? About what? About your dad getting remarried. About whatever's actually bothering you. Lucas didn't look up. I don't care who he marries. You care. You're just angry about it. Why would I be angry? It's his life. Because it means he's moving on like nothing happened. Like your mom never mattered. Like the past 12 years were just a warm-up for whoever comes next. Lucas's grip on his phone tightened. He introduced me to her last week. Told me I should call her mom. Ethan felt anger flare in his chest. What did you say? I told him to go to hell. He grounded me for a week. Good. I mean, not the grounding part, the first part. Lucas finally looked at him. Why do you even care? I'm not your kid. No, you're not. But your mom loves you more than anything in this world. And that means something to me. And for what it's worth, I think you're a pretty decent kid, even when you're being an asshole. Lucas almost smiled. I wasn't being an asshole. You kind of were. Okay, maybe a little. They sat in silence for a minute. Then Lucas spoke again, quieter. I don't want him to replace her. With Carolyn, I mean, like she never existed. He can't replace her. Your mom's irreplaceable. Then why does it feel like everyone's trying to forget she was ever part of our lives? Dad's lawyers keep talking about her like she's some crazy person who abandoned her family. His friends act like she never existed. And now he's marrying someone who looks like she could be my sister. It's like he's erasing her. He can try, but he won't succeed. You won't let him. Lucas looked at him. What if I'm not strong enough? You are. You proved that when you told the judge you wanted to live with your mom half the time. That took guts. It didn't feel like guts. It felt like I was betraying him. You weren't. You were choosing yourself, your happiness. That's not betrayal. Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I'm sorry I was a dick to Mom. Tell her, not me. Will she forgive me? She's your mom. Of course she will. Lucas nodded slowly, then stood up. I'm going to go apologize. Good idea. After he left, Ethan sat in the empty room, surrounded by the remnants of their attempt to make this space feel like home. The blue-gray walls, the posters Maya had helped pick out, the desk that was still too nice for a house like this. It all felt fragile, like one strong wind could blow it all away. Lucas and Victoria talked for a long time. Ethan couldn't hear what was said, but when they emerged an hour later, both had red eyes, and Victoria's arm was around Lucas's shoulders. We're okay, she said to Ethan. Good. That night, they ordered pizza and watched a movie, all four of them crammed onto the couch. Maya fell asleep halfway through, curled against Lucas's side. Lucas didn't move, just let her stay there, and something in Ethan's chest eased a little. Maybe they could do this. Maybe it would actually work. The turning point came 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon that started normal and ended with everything changed. Victoria had a meeting with her board, a virtual one she'd been preparing for all week. It was her chance to pitch her return as CEO, to prove she was stable and capable and ready to lead again. She'd rehearsed her presentation a dozen times, adjusted the slides, practiced her answers to every possible question. Ethan wished her luck before she closed herself in the office. She looked terrified. "You've got this," he said. "I hope so." 2 hours later, she emerged. Her face was unreadable. "Well?" Ethan asked. "They voted." "And?" 7-5 in my favor. I'm back as CEO, effective immediately." Ethan felt relief wash through him. "That's amazing." "Yeah." But she didn't sound happy. She sounded exhausted. "What's wrong?" Victoria sat down at the kitchen table, buried her face in her hands. Richard was on the call. He abstained from voting, but he made a speech first, told the board that I was making a mistake, that I wasn't ready, that I'd run the company into the ground within 6 months. And then he said he'd be watching closely, waiting for me to fail. He's just bitter. He's right, though. I'm not ready. I've been out of the game for months. The industry's moved on. I'm walking back into a company that half the board doesn't trust me to run. So prove them wrong. What if I can't? Ethan crossed the room, crouched in front of her chair. Then you fail, and you get back up and try again. That's what you've been doing this whole time. I'm tired of failing. You haven't failed. You're still here. You got your son back. You got your company back. You're winning, Victoria. You just don't see it yet. She looked at him, eyes wet. What did I do to deserve you? You asked for help. You let someone in. That's more than most people ever manage. She pulled him up, kissed him hard. When they broke apart, she was smiling through her tears. I love you. I love you too. I need to tell you something. Ethan's stomach dropped. Okay. The board wants me back in the city, full time. They want me in the office, visible, present. No more working remotely. When? Starting next month. Ethan sat back on his heels. That's fast. I know, and I know what it means. I'd have to move back, find a place downtown, be there 5-6 days a week. What about Lucas? He'd come with me on my weeks. Richard's in the city too, so it makes sense. Right, that makes sense. Victoria looked at him, her expression careful. I want you to come with me. To the city? Yes, you and Maya. We could get a place together. Big enough for all of us. You could find work there, something better than warehouse jobs. Maya could go to a good school. We could actually build a life together, not just survive. Ethan's mind raced. Leave the only home Maya had ever known. Leave Mrs. Chen, who'd been like a grandmother to her. Leave the familiar streets and the life he'd built, small and struggling as it was. I don't know, he said slowly. Why not? Because it's a big change. Because Maya's settled here. Because I don't know if I'd fit into your world. You already fit. You're part of it. Am I? Or am I just the guy who happened to be there when you needed someone? Victoria's face went hard. Is that really what you think? That you're just some convenient placeholder? No, I don't know. Maybe. Ethan, I'm asking you to move in with me, to build a real future together. That's not a placeholder. That's a commitment. A commitment that requires me to give up everything. Not everything, just geography. Your life would still be your life, just in a different place. It's not that simple. Why not? Because you're asking me to follow you into a world where I don't belong, where everyone's going to look at me and wonder what the hell a billionaire CEO is doing with some broke ex-warehouse worker, where I'm going to feel like a charity case every single day. Victoria stood up, her voice rising. You're not a charity case. You're the man I love, the man who saved me when I had nowhere else to go, the man I want to spend my life with. Why can't you see that? Because I've been on the other side of this before. With Maya's mother. She was from money, I wasn't. She slummed it with me for a while, then realized what she was missing and left. I can't go through that again. I'm not her. I know you're not. But what happens in 6 months when you're back to attending galas and board meetings and charity events? When you're surrounded by people who actually understand your world, you're going to realize you settled. I'm not settling. I'm choosing. There's a difference. Is there? They stared at each other across the kitchen, the air thick with things unsaid. Finally, Victoria spoke, her voice cold. If you don't want to come with me, just say so. Don't make up excuses about not belonging or being a charity case. Just be honest. I am being honest. No, you're being scared, and I understand that. But I can't fight for us if you've already decided we're doomed. I haven't decided anything. Then what do you want, Ethan? Because I'm standing here asking you to take a chance on us, and you're telling me all the reasons it won't work. So what do you actually want? He didn't have an answer. Or maybe he did, but he was too afraid to say it. Victoria waited. When he stayed silent, she nodded slowly. Right. Well, let me know when you figure it out. She left the kitchen. A few seconds later, he heard the bedroom door close. Ethan stood there, feeling like the floor had just dropped out from under him. The next few days were tense. Victoria was polite but distant, focusing on work and Lucas's upcoming visit. Ethan tried to talk to her, tried to explain what he was feeling, but every conversation ended the same way, her asking what he wanted, him not having an answer. Maya noticed the change. Are you and Victoria fighting? Kind of. About what? Grown-up stuff. That's a cop-out. You're right, it is. Ethan sighed. Victoria wants us to move to the city with her. I'm not sure if that's the right thing for us. Why not? Because it's a big change. You'd have to leave your school, your friends, Mrs. Chen. Maya thought about it. Would I get to see Lucas more? Yeah, probably. And Victoria? Yeah. Then I want to go. Ethan blinked. Just like that? Dad, you're happy when Victoria's around. Like, really happy. I haven't seen you smile this much since before Mom left. If moving to the city means we get to keep that, then yeah, I want to go. What about your friends here? I can make new friends. I'm good at that. Mrs. Chen? She can visit, or we can visit her. It's not like we're moving to another planet. Ethan stared at his 7-year-old daughter, amazed. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just don't listen. He laughed despite himself, pulled her into a hug. You're right. I don't listen nearly enough. That night, after Maya went to bed, Ethan knocked on the bedroom door. Victoria was sitting on the bed with her laptop, working. Can we talk? He asked. If you want. He sat down beside her. I'm sorry, for the past few days. For being an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're scared. I get it. Yeah, I'm scared. Terrified, actually. But Maya helped me see something. What's that? That I've been so focused on all the ways this could go wrong, I haven't let myself think about how it could go right. Victoria closed her laptop, turned to face him. And now? Now I'm thinking about waking up next to you every morning. About Lucas and Maya growing up together. About building something real with you, not just surviving day to day. And that sounds pretty damn good. Her expression softened. Yeah? Yeah. So, if the offer's still open, I'd like to come with you, me and Maya, to the city, to your world, wherever. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. The offer's still open. Even though I was being difficult? Especially because you were being difficult. It means you were actually thinking about it, not just saying yes to make me happy. Ethan cupped her face, kissed her softly. I love you, and I'm sorry I made you doubt that. I love you too, and I'm sorry for pushing so hard. They held each other for a long moment, and Ethan felt something settle in his chest, something that felt like certainty. When do we leave? He asked. End of the month. That gives us 3 weeks to pack, find a place, get Maya enrolled in school. That's not a lot of time. We'll make it work, we always do. And somehow, Ethan believed her. The next 3 weeks were a blur. They found an apartment downtown, a 3-bedroom place that cost more per month than Ethan used to make in 6 months. Victoria insisted on covering the rent, at least until he found work, and this time Ethan let her. Pride had its place, but so did practicality. They packed up the rental house, said goodbye to Mrs. Chen, who cried and made them promise to visit. Maya was excited, talking non-stop about her new school and new room. Lucas seemed cautiously optimistic, like he didn't want to get his hopes up, but couldn't help it. And through it all, Victoria was there, planning, organizing, making it happen. She'd gotten her company back and her confidence with it. Watching her work was like watching someone come back to life. On their last night in the house, Ethan stood in the empty living room, looking around at the space that had held so much. This was where he'd brought Victoria that first night, where they'd had their first real conversation, where they'd fallen in love. Victoria came up behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "About how much has changed, how different everything is now compared to when you showed up on that highway." "Good different or bad different?" "Good. Definitely good." She rested her head against his back. "I never thanked you properly for taking me in that night, for giving me a place to land." "You've thanked me plenty." "No, I haven't. You saved my life, Ethan. Literally. If you hadn't stopped, if you just kept driving, I don't know where I'd be right now, but I know it wouldn't be here." Ethan turned around, pulled her close. "You would have figured it out. You're too strong not to." "Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to figure it out alone." They stood like that in the empty room, holding each other, until Maya called from the hallway that the moving truck was here. The city welcomed them with noise and traffic and a pace that made Ethan's head spin. But Victoria navigated it like she'd never left, confident and sure. She introduced them to the building staff, showed Maya where the park was, pointed out Lucas's favorite pizza place. The apartment was bigger than Ethan expected, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the downtown skyline. Maya claimed the room with the best light, Lucas took the one closest to the bathroom, and Ethan and Victoria settled into the master bedroom that was bigger than his entire old house. "This is surreal," Ethan said, standing at the window. "In a good way?" "Yeah, in a really good way." That night they ordered takeout and ate on the living room floor because the furniture hadn't arrived yet. Lucas told them about his upcoming science project, Maya talked about her new teacher, and Victoria smiled more than Ethan had ever seen her smile. Later, after the kids went to bed, Victoria and Ethan stood on the balcony, looking out at the city lights. "I never thought I'd be here," Victoria said quietly. "Free, happy, with you." "Me neither. Are you glad we did this?" "Ask me in 6 months." She laughed. "Fair enough." Ethan pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. "Yeah, I'm glad. More than glad." "Good. Because there's no going back now." "I wouldn't want to." They stood there in the cool night air, the city humming below them, and Ethan thought about everything that had led them here. The broken-down car on the highway, the custody battle, the fear and uncertainty and moments when it all seemed impossible. And he thought about what came next, Victoria reclaiming her place in the world, Lucas and Maya becoming siblings, building a life together that was messy and complicated and real. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was theirs. And that was enough. The first month in the city was harder than any of them wanted to admit. Maya cried herself to sleep twice, missing Mrs. Chen and her old bedroom. Lucas got into a fight at school with a kid who made a comment about his mother. Ethan interviewed for 7 jobs and got rejected by all of them, each rejection chipping away at the confidence he'd tried so hard to build. And Victoria, despite reclaiming her CEO position, came home most nights looking like she'd been through a war. "The board's watching everything I do," she said one evening, loosening her tie as she walked through the door. "Every decision, every meeting, every email, waiting for me to mess up so they can say I told you so." Ethan was making dinner, something simple because that's all he knew how to make. "So don't mess up." "Thanks, super helpful." "I'm serious. You know what you're doing. You built that company. They're just intimidated because you're back. Or they're right to be worried. I missed 6 months of developments. The market's shifted. Our biggest competitor just launched a product that's eating into our share. I'm playing catch-up, and everyone knows it. Then catch up. You're good at that too." She looked at him, exhausted. "I don't know if good is enough anymore." But she went to work the next day and fought anyway, because that's what Victoria did. She fought. Ethan's breakthrough came from an unexpected place. He was at the park with Maya, watching her climb the jungle gym when a man sat down on the bench beside him. "Your daughter?" the man asked. "Yeah, the one who thinks she's invincible." The man laughed. "Mine's the same, the blonde one trying to go down the slide backwards." They watched their kids play for a while. Then the man extended his hand. "I'm David, David Chen." Ethan shook it. Ethan Cole. Wait, Chen? Any relation to Diane Chen? My sister, the lawyer. How do you know her? Well, she represented my girlfriend in her custody case. David's eyebrows rose. Victoria Hale? Yeah. Small world. Diane talks about that case all the time. Says it was one of the most satisfying wins she's ever had. They talked for another 20 minutes. Easy conversation about kids and the city and the weather. Then David mentioned he ran a construction company. Was always looking for good people. You ever work construction? He asked. Some. Mostly warehouse and loading. But I can swing a hammer. We're starting a new project next month. Mixed-use development downtown. Could use another foreman if you're interested. Ethan blinked. Seriously? Yeah, pay's decent, benefits are good, it's hard work, but honest work. You interested? Hell yes, I'm interested. David pulled out his phone. Give me your number, I'll set up an interview. When Ethan got home and told Victoria, she actually cried. See? She said, hugging him. I told you it would work out. You were right, don't get used to hearing that. She laughed, and for the first time in weeks, it sounded real. The job interview went well. Ethan started 2 weeks later, and the work was exactly what he needed. Physical, straightforward, with clear goals and tangible results. He came home tired but satisfied, and slowly, the apartment started to feel less like a temporary landing spot and more like home. Lucas's transition was rougher. The fight at school led to a suspension, which led to Victoria having to leave work early to pick him up from the principal's office. She was furious on the drive home. What were you thinking? You can't just punch people because they say things you don't like. Lucas stared out the window, jaw set. He said you were a gold digger who divorced Dad for his money. Victoria's anger deflated. Lucas, I know it's not true, but everyone at that school thinks it is. They all know who Dad is, who you are. They think they know our whole story. Let them think whatever they want. Easy for you to say. You're not the one dealing with it every day. Victoria pulled the car over, turned to face him. You're right, I'm not. And I'm sorry. I didn't think about how this would affect you at school. It's not your fault. It kind of is. I'm the one who left. I'm the one who made everything public. Lucas looked at her, and for a moment, he looked so much older than 13. I'm glad you left. I just wish it didn't come with so much baggage. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. They sat there in the parked car for a long time. Then Lucas said quietly, Can I transfer schools? Somewhere nobody knows who we are? Yeah, we can look into it. Thanks, Mom. It was the first time he'd called her that without hesitation, without the slight pause that meant he was still figuring out if she deserved the title. Victoria felt something crack open in her chest. I love you, Lucas. I love you too. The weeks turned into months. Maya settled into her new school, made friends with a girl named Priya, who lived 2 floors down. Lucas transferred to a smaller private school where nobody cared who his parents were. Victoria slowly won back her board's confidence, launching a new product line that exceeded projections by 30%. And Ethan became the kind of foreman his crew actually respected, not because he was the loudest or the toughest, but because he listened and worked harder than anyone else. They found a rhythm, chaotic and imperfect, but theirs. Richard remained a persistent shadow. He contested every custody arrangement, questioned every decision Victoria made regarding Lucas, and continued spreading rumors about her instability. But his power was waning. The judge had ruled in Victoria's favor too many times for his accusations to carry the weight they once did. And when he married Carolyn in a lavish ceremony that made all the society pages, people started asking questions about how quickly he'd moved on. Lucas refused to attend the wedding, told his father flat out that he wouldn't watch him replace their family with a newer model. Richard threatened, cajoled, tried every manipulation tactic in his arsenal, but Lucas held firm. I'm done letting him control me, Lucas told Victoria afterward. I'm done pretending everything's fine when it's not. Victoria hugged him tight. I'm proud of you. Yeah, well, I learned from the best. Spring arrived, and with it, a shift. Victoria's company went public with a new initiative that positioned them as industry leaders again. The board stopped watching her every move and started trusting her vision. Her assets were finally unfrozen, the legal battles mostly settled. She could breathe again. One Saturday morning, Ethan woke up to find her already awake, sitting by the window with coffee, looking out at the city. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "About how different everything is now. A year ago, I was trapped in a marriage that was killing me. 6 months ago, I was sleeping on your couch, wondering if I'd ever see my son again. And now," she gestured around the apartment, "now I have all this. Regrets? Not even one." She turned to look at him. "Do you? About moving here? About us?" "No." "Not even a little?" Ethan got up, crossed the room, sat down beside her. "Okay, maybe a little. I miss the quiet sometimes. Miss the simplicity of that old house. But I wouldn't trade this for anything. Even on the hard days?" "Especially on the hard days. Because the hard days mean we're actually living, not just surviving." Victoria leaned into him. "When did you get so philosophical?" "I've always been philosophical. You just weren't paying attention." She laughed, and the sound filled the room like light. That afternoon, Ethan took Maya to the park while Victoria worked on a presentation. When they got back, Lucas was there, having arrived early for his weekend visit. "Hey," Ethan said. "Didn't expect you until tonight. Dad and Carolyn are fighting. About me, I think. I didn't want to be there for it." "Fair enough. You hungry?" "Starving." They made sandwiches together, the three of them in the kitchen, bumping into each other and laughing. Maya told Lucas about her week. He told her about his science project, and Ethan just listened, feeling something warm settle in his chest. Later, when Victoria emerged from her office, she found all three of them on the couch watching a movie. She stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching. "Room for one more?" she asked. "Always," Ethan said. She squeezed in beside him, and Maya immediately curled into her side. Lucas stayed where he was, but his hand found hers and squeezed. This, Ethan thought, was what home felt like. 2 weeks later, Ethan asked Victoria to marry him. Not with a big production or an expensive ring or any of the things he thought she might expect. Just the two of them on the balcony after the kids had gone to bed. The city lights spread out below them like stars. "I've been thinking," he said. "Dangerous." "I'm serious. We've been doing this for almost a year now. Living together, raising kids together, building a life together. And I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to realize you made a mistake. But it hasn't happened." Victoria turned to face him. "It's not going to happen." "I know, and that's terrifying and amazing at the same time." He took her hands. "I don't have a ring. I don't have some romantic speech prepared, but I know I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So, Victoria Hale, will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "You're supposed to get on one knee." "I'm too old for that. My knees don't work like they used to." She laughed through her tears. "Yes, obviously yes." They kissed on the balcony while the city hummed below them, and Ethan felt like he could finally breathe all the way in. The next morning, they told the kids. Maya screamed and jumped up and down. Lucas smiled, really smiled, and said, "About time." "You knew I was going to propose?" Ethan asked. "Dude, you've been looking at rings online for like 2 months. You're not subtle." "I thought I cleared my browser history." "You did, but I saw the receipts when I was looking for printer paper." Victoria laughed so hard she had to sit down. They decided on a small wedding, just family and close friends, nothing like the elaborate affair Victoria had endured with Richard. They found a spot by the river, an old oak tree that had been there longer than the city itself, and that's where they said their vows on a Sunday afternoon in June. Victoria wore a simple white dress, no veil, no train, just her. Ethan wore a suit that Lucas helped him pick out. Maya was the flower girl and took her job very seriously. Lucas stood beside Ethan as best man, and when the officiant asked if anyone objected, he said, "If anyone objects, they can fight me," which made everyone laugh. Diane Chen was there, and David and his family. Mrs. Chen made the trip from their old town, crying through the whole ceremony. A few of Victoria's board members showed up, looking surprised by the simplicity of it all. And notably absent was Richard Hale, who'd sent a formal letter declining the invitation and questioning Victoria's judgment in marrying beneath her station. Victoria had read the letter, laughed, and thrown it away. When it was time for vows, Victoria went first. Ethan, a year and a half ago, I was broken. Completely, utterly broken. I'd lost myself in a marriage that demanded I be perfect. And when I couldn't be perfect anymore, I ran. I ended up on the side of a highway in the middle of the night, sitting next to a car that didn't work, feeling like my whole life had stopped working too. And then you pulled over. You didn't have to. You could have kept driving, but you stopped, and you helped me. And you gave me a place to land when I had nowhere else to go. You didn't try to fix me. You just stood beside me while I figured out how to fix myself. You taught me that love doesn't have to hurt, that it can be gentle and steady and real. You showed me what it means to choose someone every single day, not because you have to, but because you want to. I'm standing here today not because I need you to save me, but because I want to build a life with you, because you're my best friend, my partner, and the person I want beside me through everything that comes next. I love you, and I choose you, today and every day after. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Ethan had to clear his throat twice before he could speak. Victoria, I'm not good with words the way you are. I'm a pretty simple guy. I work with my hands, I like cheap beer, and I still don't really understand what you do at your company. But I know this. You're the strongest person I've ever met. And I don't mean strong like you never break. I mean strong like you break, and you put yourself back together and you keep going. You could have stayed in that marriage. It would have been easier in a lot of ways. But you chose yourself. You chose freedom. You chose to fight for your son and your life and your happiness. And somehow, impossibly, you chose me too. I'm not rich. I can't give you mansions or fancy cars or any of the things you're probably used to. What I can give you is this. I will show up every single day. I will stand beside you when things are hard. I will choose you over and over again, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Because you see me, really see me, and you love me anyway. You're my home, Victoria, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice. Victoria was crying openly now. So was Maya. Lucas tried to hide it, but his eyes were wet too. The officiant pronounced them married, and when they kissed, the small crowd erupted in applause. The reception was in a restaurant nearby, nothing fancy, just good food and people who mattered. Lucas gave a speech that was funny and heartfelt and made Victoria cry again. Maya insisted on dancing with both of them. Mrs. Chen cornered Ethan and told him if he ever hurt Victoria, she'd hunt him down personally, and Ethan believed her. Richard's absence was noticed, but not mourned. His shadow had loomed over Victoria's life for so long, but here, in this moment, surrounded by people who actually loved her, he simply didn't matter. Late in the evening, Ethan found Victoria standing by the window, looking out at the river. "You okay?" he asked. "More than okay. I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy. I don't think I've felt this way since I was a kid." "No regrets?" "Not a single one." She turned to him. "Thank you." "For what?" "For stopping that night, for taking me in, for loving me even when I was a mess." "You were never a mess. You were just human." She kissed him, soft and sweet. "I love you, Ethan Cole." "I love you too, Victoria Cole." She smiled at the sound of her new name. "That's going to take some getting used to. We've got time." The months after the wedding settled into something that felt almost normal. Lucas thrived at his new school, made friends who didn't care about his last name. Maya continued to be Maya, fearless and funny and wise beyond her years. Victoria's company launched another successful quarter, and the board stopped questioning her leadership. Ethan got promoted to senior foreman, leading his own crew on a major downtown project. They had family dinners most nights, all four of them around the table, talking over each other and laughing. They had movie nights where nobody could agree on what to watch. They had arguments about chores and homework and whose turn it was to take out the trash. It was messy and loud and imperfect. It was everything Ethan had never known he wanted. One evening in October, almost exactly 2 years after that night on the highway, Victoria came home from work early. Ethan was in the kitchen trying to figure out how to make the chicken recipe Lucas had requested. "You're home early," he said. "I quit." Ethan nearly dropped the pan. "You what?" "I quit. Resigned. Effective 2 weeks from now." "Why? I thought things were going well." "They are. The company's in the best shape it's been in years. But I realized something today. I've spent my entire adult life building that company, proving myself, trying to be good enough. And I am good enough. I've proven everything I needed to prove. But I'm tired of spending 60 hours a week in an office when I could be here. With you. With the kids. Actually living my life instead of just managing it. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Maybe consulting. Maybe start something new and smaller. Maybe take 6 months off and figure it out as I go. The point is, I have a choice now. And I'm choosing us. Ethan crossed the kitchen, pulled her into his arms. You're sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. What about the money, the prestige, everything you worked for? I have money, more than we'll ever need. And prestige is just other people's opinions. What I want is time. Time with you, with Lucas, with Maya. Time to figure out who I am when I'm not constantly proving my worth to a board of directors. They're not going to let you go easily. I know, but I'm not asking permission. I'm telling them, this is what I want. And for the first time in my life, I'm putting what I want first. Ethan kissed her forehead. I'm proud of you. Yeah? Yeah. This is brave. Really brave. Or really stupid. Maybe both, but you're allowed to be both. She laughed, rested her head against his chest. What are you making? Trying to make chicken piccata. It's not going well. Let me help. They cooked together, bumping into each other in the small kitchen space, and when Lucas and Maya got home, the four of them ate dinner together like they did every night. But this time felt different, lighter, like something had shifted into place. After the kids went to bed, Ethan and Victoria stood on the balcony, their usual spot, looking out at the city. Do you ever think about that night? Victoria asked. The highway? All the time. What do you think would have happened if you'd kept driving? I don't know. You would have figured something out. You always do. Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to. Me too. She leaned into him and he wrapped his arms around her. Below them, the city continued its endless motion. Millions of people living their own complicated lives. But up here, in this moment, everything was still. Ethan? Yeah? I'm really glad you stopped. So am I. They stood like that for a long time, the night air cool around them, the future stretching out ahead full of possibility and uncertainty, and all the messy, beautiful complications that came with actually living. 2 years ago, Ethan had been a man going through the motions, surviving but not really living. 2 years ago, Victoria had been trapped in a life that was slowly killing her. 2 years ago, neither of them could have imagined standing here, together, with a family they'd built from broken pieces. But here they were. Not perfect, not without problems or struggles or moments of doubt, but real, present, choosing each other and this life they'd built every single day. The next morning, Lucas asked Ethan if he could officially change his last name to Cole. You don't have to do that, Ethan said. Hale is your name, your history. I know, but Cole feels more like who I am now, like who I want to be. Victoria, standing in the kitchen doorway, started crying. Are you sure? Yeah, Mom, I'm sure. The paperwork took months navigating Richard's objections and legal requirements, but eventually it went through. Lucas Cole. It looked right on paper and felt right when he said it. Richard sent another letter, this one accusing Victoria of turning his son against him. She read it once, then filed it away with all the others. His words didn't have power anymore. He was just a man shouting into the void, trying to control things that were no longer his to control. Maya asked when she could call Victoria Mom, too. You don't have to ask, Victoria said, her voice thick with emotion. You can call me whatever feels right. Okay, then. Mom? Yeah, sweetheart? Can you help me with my homework? Of course. Ethan watched them at the kitchen table, heads bent together over a math worksheet, and felt his throat get tight. His daughter had a mother again, not the one who'd left, but the one who'd chosen to stay. That night, lying in bed, Victoria turned to him. I've been thinking about what I want to do next. And? I want to start a foundation for women leaving abusive relationships, help them get legal support, housing, job training, all the things I had access to because of money that most women don't have. That's a great idea. You think so? I know so. You'd be amazing at it. I'll need help. Someone to run the operational side while I focus on fundraising and outreach. I'm sure you'll find someone. I was thinking maybe you. Ethan blinked. Me? Yeah, you're good with people. You understand what it's like to struggle. And you've been talking about wanting to do something more meaningful than construction. I never said that. You didn't have to. I can see it in your face when you come home. You like the work, but it's not fulfilling, not the way you want it to be. Ethan thought about spending his days helping people instead of building buildings, about working alongside Victoria, creating something that mattered. Can I think about it? Of course, no pressure. I just wanted you to know the offer's there. He thought about it for 3 days. Talked to David Chen, who told him he'd be an idiot not to take the opportunity. Talked to Lucas, who said he thought it was cool. Talked to Maya, who said she just wanted him to be happy. On the 4th day, he told Victoria yes. They spent the next 6 months building the foundation from the ground up. Victoria secured funding, Ethan built the infrastructure, and together they created something neither of them could have managed alone. They hired a small staff, found office space, started reaching out to women who needed help. The first woman they helped was named Sarah. She showed up at their office with 2 kids and a black eye, no money and nowhere to go. Victoria got her connected with a lawyer. Ethan helped her find an apartment and a job. 3 months later, Sarah sent them a card with a picture of her and her kids smiling. "This is what it's about," Victoria said, holding the card. "This right here." "Yeah," Ethan agreed. "It really is." The foundation grew slowly but steadily. They helped dozens of women that first year, then hundreds. Victoria spoke at conferences, raised awareness, secured major donations. Ethan ran the day-to-day operations, made sure every woman who walked through their doors got the help she needed. It was the hardest work either of them had ever done, and the most rewarding. One afternoon, 3 years after that night on the highway, Ethan and Victoria drove out to the spot where they'd first met. The highway was empty, just like it had been that night. They pulled over where her car had broken down, got out, stood there looking at the empty road. "Weird to think this is where it all started," Victoria said. "Is it weird, or is it perfect?" "Both, maybe." Ethan took her hand. "If you could go back knowing everything that was coming, would you still do it? Leave Richard? End up here?" Victoria didn't hesitate. "Yes, every time." "What about you? Would you still stop?" "I'd stop every single time. Even knowing how hard it would be, even knowing everything we'd have to fight through, I'd still stop." She leaned into him, and they stood there on the side of the highway where their lives had collided and changed forever. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me, for helping me, for loving me even when I was at my worst. You were never at your worst. You were just at your most real." They got back in the car and drove home to the apartment that held their family, their life, their future. And as they drove, Ethan thought about all the choices that had led them here, the small ones and the big ones, the brave ones and the terrified ones. He thought about Victoria sitting on the side of the road, broken and scared and alone. About himself, tired and going through the motions, thinking his life would never be more than it was. And he thought about how one choice, one moment of stopping instead of driving past, had changed everything. Life wasn't perfect. It was still messy and complicated and full of challenges. Richard was still out there, still bitter, still trying to cause problems when he could. The foundation struggled for funding sometimes. Lucas had bad days where his anger at his father surfaced in destructive ways. Maya had nightmares about her biological mother coming back. Victoria sometimes woke up in the middle of the night, panicking that she'd lost everything again. But they had each other, and they had learned that love wasn't about fixing everything or making everything perfect. It was about showing up, day after day, choosing each other through the mess and the chaos and the hard parts. It was about being brave enough to ask for help and brave enough to offer it. About building something real instead of something that just looked good from the outside. It was about stopping when someone needed you, even when it would be easier to keep driving. That night, all 4 of them sat around the dinner table, arguing about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Lucas said, absolutely not. Maya said absolutely yes. Victoria abstained, and Ethan just laughed at all of them. This was family, not the perfect version for magazines or movies. The real version, messy and loud and imperfect and absolutely worth everything. Later, after the kids were in bed, Ethan found Victoria in Lucas's room, watching him sleep. "You okay?" he whispered. "Yeah, just remembering when I thought I'd never get to do this again, stand here and watch him sleep. But you did. You fought for it and you won. We won. I couldn't have done it without you." Ethan put his arm around her shoulders. "That's what partnership means. We fight together." They stood there for another moment, then quietly left the room. In the hallway, they passed Maya's room, saw her sprawled across her bed with a book open on her chest, already asleep. "She's getting so big," Victoria said. "Yeah, they both are. I don't want to miss any of it. You won't. We're right here, present. That's what matters." They went to their own room, got ready for bed in comfortable silence. When they finally lay down, Victoria curled into Ethan's side like she always did. "I love you," she said. "I love you too." "No, I mean, I really love you. The kind of love that doesn't quit or fade or get tired. The kind that just keeps growing." Ethan kissed her forehead. "I know. I feel it too." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, and when Ethan woke up in the middle of the night, he lay there for a while just watching her sleep, thinking about everything they'd built, everything they'd survived, everything that was still to come. Outside, the city continued its endless motion. Inside, his family slept safely. And somewhere out there, on some empty highway, maybe someone else was broken down and scared, waiting for someone to stop. Ethan hoped someone would. Hoped they'd be brave enough to pull over, to offer help, to take a chance on a stranger who might end up changing their whole life. Because that's what people did. Or at least what they should do. They saw someone in need, and they stopped. They offered what they could. They showed up, even when it was inconvenient or scary or uncertain. They chose kindness over convenience, connection over comfort, love over fear. And sometimes, if they were very lucky, they got to build something beautiful from the broken pieces. Ethan closed his eyes, pulled Victoria a little closer, and fell back asleep. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own moments of joy and frustration, and everything in between. But tonight, everyone he loved was safe and whole and here. And that was more than enough. It was everything.